Full Metal Storm, Battle of the Machines. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 370 Ambition. This job is the team mission of Black Witch, and it is also a gift that Yukiashu promised to give to Luo Yan. Cheng Baizhen's Camp Coyote originally served Black Witch and was a node of a transportation channel of Black Witch on the surface. But this node rebelled not long ago and detained a batch of important materials. Luo Yan was supposed to accept this task before, but because of Liu Zhao, it was delayed until now. After completing this task, not only can he get the contribution points of the Black Witch reward, but Black Witch will also convert the value of the batch of materials into general work points in the dungeon, and take out 1/3 as a reward. These are the things on the surface. As for the things that are not on the surface, such as recruiting the soldiers of that camp, harvesting Cheng Baizhen's personal assets and even other grey income, for Team 7, which is in the development stage, it is also a considerable fortune. I don't know what kind of arrangements Yukiashu made. In short, this task with a lot of money was designated to be accepted by Team 7. Only when Team 7 voluntarily gives up can other teams accept it. If there were no such arrangement, such a task would have been snatched by other teams long ago. After arranging the work, Luo Yan left. ****** in the wilderness, the Coyote camp. At sunset, this camp located in an abandoned town was full of smoke and looked very lively. Although it did not reach the scale of a surface base, thanks to the force built by Cheng Baizhen and dozens of his warriors, the Coyote camp could not fight against the Behemoth, but fighting against a small group of Behemoth parasites was not a problem. Therefore, this camp also attracted many homeless survivors. They live here and exchange meager wages from the camp through labor, which can only make a living. Now it is late, and the scavengers who go to the town to recycle items are returning to the camp in groups of 3 or 5. Only after paying 1/3 of the harvest a day when entering the camp can they return to the camp and enjoy the protection of the camp. In order to facilitate management, Cheng Baizhen used engineering equipment to flatten most of the buildings and other structures in the camp. Low bungalows were built on a large open space with a good view, and there were only tents on the periphery. Those were the survivors who had just arrived at the camp. They could not afford to rent bungalows and could only live in simple tents. It was already December, and the weather was cold. A layer of white snow accumulated on the ground of the camp. The camp would send people to shovel snow every day, but only the main roads of the camp were cleared. The survivors had to take care of other places. However, the survivors who had worked hard all day had no energy to shovel snow. Therefore, most of the people who returned were tired and walked on the snow with 1 foot deep and 1 foot shallow. Deep in the camp, barbed wire was erected and a cordon was drawn. The soldiers inside were patrolling with large wolfhounds. This area was Cheng Baizhen's old nest and a forbidden area. Survivors might be shot with a few bullets if they approached, let alone entering. Only with Cheng Baizhen's permission, and by car, could they enter his temporary palace. As a local emperor on the surface, Cheng Baizhen lived in a much better place than the survivors. This place was originally a shopping mall in the town. After being transformed by Cheng Baizhen, it has become a combination of residence and fortress. It is easy to defend and difficult to attack, and with strict guards, this small camp has been able to survive until now after the natural disaster. On the rooftop of the main building, Cheng Baizhen bit a cigar and looked at the camp under the setting sun with a sense of accomplishment like a king inspecting his territory. Although he is not young, he is still in good shape due to his profession and the practice of visualization. At the dining table behind him, the chef wearing a high hat put a piece of bloody steak that was only fried to 3/4 rare on the plate, garnished it, and sent it to the table. A tall and beautiful woman with straight legs, who was said to be a third-tier celebrity, picked up a bottle of red wine in an ice bucket next to her and poured half a glass into a high-foot glass next to her. Cheng Baizhen turned around and invited a cold-faced man next to him to take a seat. "Mr. Jiuying, you have come all the way here. Please try my chef's cooking skills." Cheng Baizhen smiled and was enthusiastic and winked at the former celebrity. The woman understood and enthusiastically held the man named Jiuying, her hot body almost pressed against him. At this time, a smart-looking young man came quickly. Li Yu, Cheng Baizhen's right-hand man, was also the commander of the soldiers in the camp. "Boss, I just received a message." Cheng Baizhen glanced at him and asked indifferently, "What's the message?" "The Black Witch sent a notice, asking you to send the detained materials to the Yinwen base within 3 days, and explain the matter," Li Yu said quickly. Cheng Baizhen snorted, glanced at Jiuying, and then said, "Don't pay attention to it." Li Yu frowned, and was about to say something. Cheng Baizhen glared at him. "Little Li, don't you see that there is a distinguished guest here? Why are you so ignorant? Go down." Li Yu had no choice but to nod and turn away. At this time, Jiuying, who had his hand on the little star's long legs, asked coldly, "What's wrong?" Cheng Baizhen laughed. "It's okay, Mr. Chu. Try my bottle of red wine. It's good stuff." There were bursts of laughter on the rooftop. Outside the French window, snow powder was floating. Li Yu took a look at the scene, sighed, and closed the door. Behind the door, a short-haired woman opened a macute box and applied lipstick on her lips. "Did you get scolded?" The short-haired woman put away the macute box and casually raised her hair that reached her shoulders. "I told you a long time ago that the boss has changed. Or rather, he has always been like this, but now that he has hooked up with that Jew, his ambitions are no longer hidden, and he has simply thrown them all out." "Don't say it, Liuc." Li Yu took out a cigarette and bit it in his mouth. Liuc ignored him and continued, "Now the boss is full of vigor and vitality. How could he take the old boss seriously?" Li Yu lit a cigarette, took a puff, and sighed. "The Black Witch organization has been around for 2 years, and almost no one on the surface knows about it. So the boss doesn't take the other party seriously, but those people are not simple. Every time we deal with the guys, they are either well equipped or have a high level of cultivation. In my opinion, this Black Witch is not much worse than the Yellow Spring behind the surname Chu. But now the boss and the surname Chu hit it off, and Chu instigated him to deduct the supplies of the Black Witch's startup capital. No matter how I persuade him, it's useless. He wasn't like this before." At this time, voices came, and then more than a dozen people hurried over, carrying a stretcher. A person was lying on the stretcher, with a bloody head and heavy breathing. Li Yu ironed through it. How could this happen? A long-haired man shouted, "Brother Li, you have to take charge of everyone. Those people named Chu were making trouble in the camp. We just tried to stop them with words, and they beat Xiao Zheng half to death." Li Yu's brows were suddenly wrinkled into a shape. Chapter 371 Arrival. Also on this night, in a surface base 170 kilometers away from the once forbidden area Misty Canyon, this night was the same as countless nights in the past. After the sun went down, the base became dim, the thermal power plant operated at low power, and other factories in the base stopped production. On the one hand, it was to avoid excessive power consumption, and on the other hand, it was worried that the lights and sounds would attract behemoths. The residents in the base went to bed early. In this era without nightlife, being able to rest at sunset is a kind of happiness. However, there are also some people who cannot end this busy day in a warm bed even when night falls. Jiuying is one of them, but he is happier than others because he is a mecha master. Although he needs to be on duty at night, at least he does not have to be exposed to the howling cold wind outdoors, but hides in his warm duty room and can also flip through Playboy magazine. TSK, this one is not bad, but the breasts are a little small. I like this one, long legs and big butt. Drooling over the magazine, Jiuying casually picked up a can of beer, gulped down a few mouthfuls, picked up a handful of peanuts, threw them into his mouth, and ate them happily. Outside the duty room, 2 soldiers tightened their military coats and looked at Jiuying with envy. "One day I can have my own duty room like Mr. Ki, and I can drink and eat peanuts." A soldier had the word envy written on his face. Another soldier pulled his companion. "Let's go. Don't be envious. It's our fault that we don't know how to drive a mecha." They jumped into a base vehicle and drove along the designated route. "Have you heard that the Misty Canyon has disappeared?" "Yes, it seems that a war took place there, and many people lost their jobs as a result." "Yes, the Forbidden Land is gone, and many people are out of work." I think we will soon be unemployed too. It's possible. Although our base is not as large as the Lanquan base, it is not far from the Forbidden Land. Even if we can't eat meat, we can still drink soup. Now that the Forbidden Land is gone, I think our base will be destroyed sooner or later. While the two were talking, a strong wind suddenly blew from nowhere and blew away the hat of one of the soldiers. The soldier looked up and saw that the hat flew into the air in the wind and snow. The air was pitch black, and it seemed that even the moonlight had disappeared. At this moment, an eyeball turned out from the darkness and stared at the soldier across the air. In the duty room, Jiuying put down the magazine and was about to get up to go to the bathroom when he heard screams from outside. He was stunned for a moment, then ran out of the duty room and ran towards his mecha. While running, he called out using the base's radio communication system, "I'm the mecha pilot Jiuying. What's the situation now? Please report. Please report." The radio soon responded, "Pilot Jiuying, there is a giant beast. There is a giant." The communication was suddenly interrupted, and a harsh noise came from the earphones, causing Jiuying to take off his earphones. He entered the cockpit, put on his helmet, and connected the neural wires to achieve empathy. In the mecha warehouse, the lights of the engine and energy furnace lit up, and then the lights on the mecha turned on, illuminating the scene outside the panoramic window. Jiuying controlled his mecha and strode out of the warehouse and saw a giant beast wreaking havoc in the base. The giant beast looked like a worm, with a big head and a small tail, like an anchor. However, it was smaller than other giant beasts and did not look difficult to deal with. At this moment, the soldiers in the base were desperately trying to stop the giant beast, but the effect was not good. A soldier in a car was even eaten by the monster along with the car. "Leave it to me," Jiuying yelled, and his mech rushed out, shaking the base and waking countless people from their dreams. The mech raised its rifle and fired at the smaller insect beast. The fierce firepower soon tore the insect's skin and flesh apart. In the end, the insect was torn in half by Jiuying. TSK, too easy. Jiuying looked outside the panoramic window at the giant beast with a head like an anchor, and then scanned the giant beast's radar. Strange, why is there no match? At this moment, the cab suddenly shook violently. It turned out that another giant insect flew through the air and hit the mech, causing Jiuying to fall on his back. Looking out through the panoramic window, Jiuying saw another anchor-shaped insect floating above. After the insect passed by, he suddenly saw something sticking out of the clouds in the night sky covered by thick clouds. It was a wing fin, so huge that it was unimaginable. It occupied Jiuying's field of vision, so Jiuying could not see anything else except this wing fin. An indescribable and extremely strong sense of danger made Jiuying's hair stand on end. Before he even came to his senses, his body had already started to move. The mecha turned over and climbed up, and then in the stunned eyes of the soldiers, Jiuying controlled the mecha to flee for his life. In a blink of an eye, the mecha had rushed out of the base and headed towards the endless night. In the cab, a voice in the base command room yelled, "Jiuying, where are you going? Jiuying, come back. Asshole, Jiuying, are you going to defect? Hey, what is that? Oh my god. Ah. Help." The communication channel suddenly rang with a noise, and then the signal disappeared. At this time, Jiuying, who was in the cab, only felt a violent vibration behind him, followed by flying sand and rocks outside the panoramic window. The computer on the command console kept alarming, reminding the driver that the mecha was experiencing a strong impact. Jiuying had no choice but to let the mecha squat down and lower its center of gravity. After resisting this wave of impact, he looked back, and his scalp immediately went numb. The base disappeared in the clusters of brilliant flames rising up. In the flames, the anchor-shaped insects that looked like smaller behemoths swam in the flames. In the sky, a wing fin was gradually retracting into the thick clouds. At this time, a strong wind blew away the clouds in the sky, and the moon came out. For some reason, the moon tonight was glowing yellow, and there were stripes around it. Suddenly, Jiuying took a breath of cold air. That was not the moon at all. It was an eyeball. At the same time, in Changping City, in the ground monitoring department of the Mecha Corps, it was late at night, and a monitor was dozing off. Suddenly, the computer alarm sounded, which scared him. He jumped up and saw a line of information flashing wildly on the computer screen. The monitor put on his high myopia glasses, stared at the screen, and then took a breath of cold air. Oh my god. This spectrum signal. Is this a dominant beast? But at this moment, the signal on the screen disappeared. The monitor was stunned for a moment, and then he almost lay on the workbench, typing frantically. He used his authority to call on some ground monitoring equipment and repeatedly scanned the area where the spectrum signal appeared just now. But no matter how he scanned, he didn't get any clues. It was as if it was just a computer malfunction just now. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 372 Transaction. Another day, noon. Outside the Koyode camp, Cheng Bazin, wearing a coat and looking energetic, said to Jiuying, who got into the car with a smile on his face, "Mr. Chu, take care." Today, the distinguished guest left the camp, and Cheng Bazin led more than 60 of his men to see him off, giving Jiuying enough face. But in Jiuying's eyes, all these were dispensable things, including the beautiful woman who wanted to glue herself to him with glue these 2 nights. Cheng Bazin, the former little star, and a survivor camp that looked a bit big. In his eyes, they were all ants. He looked at a subordinate who dyed his hair gradually grey outside the car and said, 15, I'll leave this to you. A batch of goods will pass through here in 3 days. You should take good care of it. The man named 15 nodded and said, I know. Jiuying closed his eyes, and his men closed the car windows, and several cars left. After watching the convoy leave, Shiwu took out a slingshot and shot a mouse's head which was passing by 100 meters away. Cheng Bazin gave a thumbs up. Mr. Shiwu has a good eye and his bullets never miss a target. Behind Liu, a young man with a bandage on his hand whispered, how old are you, and still playing with slingshots? Liu frowned, and was about to say something when suddenly an iron ball flew past his eyes. The young man behind him screamed. It turned out that one of his eyes was hit by the iron ball and blood filled his eyes. 15, with grey hair flying in the wind, said lightly, you have eyes but no vision. It's better not to have these eyes. Anger surged on Liu's face, but Cheng Bazin glared back at him. The latter laughed and said, Mr. 15 is absolutely right. Come on, let's go back to the house, and don't bother with us. After Cheng Bazin and 15 left, Liu, with short hair to his shoulders, came to Liu. Are we just going to endure it? Liu had a complicated expression. Finally, he sighed and said, take Liu to see his eyes and let the doctor try his best to save his eyes. He looked around. Also, everyone should be careful with what they say and do recently, and try not to provoke people with the surname Chu. Brotherly, these guys have been riding on our heads since they came to the camp. How long do we have to endure it? Brotherly, why don't you take everyone to find another way to make a living? The boss doesn't make decisions for us. What's the point of following him? The discontent was spreading, which really gave Liu a headache. He waved his hand. What nonsense are you talking about? Take Liu to see a doctor quickly. Do you still want to save his eyes? The soldiers in the camp had to disperse. Liu took out a cigarette and just bit it between his lips to light it, but it was snatched away by Liu. Seeing Liu smoking silently, Liu shook his head. The man surnamed Cheng saved you, but you have done so much for him over the years, and you have already repaid him. Now Cheng Bazin is no longer the Cheng Bazin who said he would lead everyone to a good life. There is no need to hang on a tree. Do you understand what I mean? Liu looked at the building in the distance with a complicated expression. Let's talk about it after a few days. Liu shrugged his shoulders and followed Liu back to the camp. When he entered the gate, he saw several new survivors registering to enter the camp. These people were dressed lightly, and only one of them was wearing a cloak that could still block the wind. The wind blew, and the hood was lifted, revealing the man's slightly messy black hair and a pair of red eyes. The red poison has attacked his heart. There is no hope. Liu sighed softly. Mr. Chiggy, our people are already in place and can act at any time. Captain, we are ready. Guan Peng and Wei Junai's voices rang out in the headset. Luo Yan said softly, "Wait for my order." Then he entered the coyote camp and glanced at a car that had just passed by. He heard clearly that a short-haired woman in the car sighed softly. Luo Yan also saw the scene outside the camp at the same time. It seems that Cheng Baizhen has indeed colluded with outsiders, but this incident has caused dissatisfaction among his subordinates. Luo Yan came late and did not meet Jiuying, but he used the Wu Wang burning eye to glance at the man named 15. He obtained the information of the other party's black rope level personnel of the Huangquan organization. Huangquan. Luo Yan walked and observed the surroundings. After sending the message to the coyote camp, Luo Yan did not wait for 3 days at all and came here with his men the next day. Now Guan Peng's iron horse and Wen Junai's men have followed his instructions and entered their battle positions, ready to attack the camp at any time. Luo Yan was not in a hurry to attack. Firstly because it was not yet time for the ultimatum, and secondly because he wanted to see what kind of deal Cheng Baizhen and Huangquan would make. Compared to Cheng Baizhen, he was more concerned about Huangquan. It seemed that this organization in the south had already begun to infiltrate the north and was secretly eroding the power of the north. Luo Yan believed that Cheng Baizhen's camp would definitely not be the only force that cooperated with Huangquan. Maybe next, Huangquan would get involved in large and small surface bases. 3 days passed. Cheng Baizhen didn't care about the ultimatum of Black Witch at all. The troops left by Jiuying gave him great confidence. That morning, a convoy arrived at the camp. Cheng Baizhen brought Liu, Liuc and others, and Shiwu to check the goods on the convoy. Shiwu ordered someone to open one of the boxes and saw that there were rifles and boxes of bullets inside. After having the boxes covered, Shiwu said to Cheng Baizhen, "You distribute these goods to other camps. You will be our agent in the north from now on, and you will get 20% of the profits from the sales. This is a long-term business with limited risks. Isn't it better than following that black wizard? In addition, if you do a good job in this first business, you can get a set of intermediate skills. This is what Mr. Jiuying promised to give you, and he will never break his promise. The 20% profit is certainly attractive, but the intermediate skills are what Cheng Baizhen dreams of." After the natural disaster, although the visualization skills have gradually spread on the surface, almost all of them can be found on the surface. Basic or elementary skills. Whether it is the underground city or the organization like Black Wizard, intermediate skills will not be passed on casually. So when Huangquan took out a set of intermediate skills, plus an agent identity, Cheng Baizhen sold Black Wizard without hesitation. At this moment, he nodded repeatedly and called Liu and Liuc over. Pointing to the convoy full of guns and ammunition, he said, "This matter is left to you. You must immediately deliver these things to several nearby camps." Liu glanced at 15 and lowered his voice and said, "Boss, the Black Witch." "Shut up." Cheng Baizhen's eyes flashed with murderous light. "Don't mention the Black Witch to me again, or get out of here." Chapter 373. What do you want me to leave behind? Cheng Baizhen and Shiwu left. Liu glanced at Liuc, shook his head, and gestured, "Let's go." Liuc blew a whistle, led a team, and got on one of the trucks. It can be seen that the trucks of Huangquan have been modified. The body is reinforced and thickened, and there are windows on both sides of the car for shooting. In addition, their escort vehicles are also equipped with heavy firepower such as anti-aircraft machine guns. There is no chance to fight against giant beasts, but there is no problem to deal with small-scale giant beast parasite clusters. Liu and Liuc each led a team and got on the truck. After a while, a convoy consisting of 2 trucks and 6 escort vehicles slowly drove towards the wilderness. More than an hour later, Liu, who was sitting in one of the escort vehicles, suddenly saw that there was a truck blocking the road in front. Liu immediately had an ominous premonition. Coyote camp. In the renovated shopping mall building, Cheng Baizhen was greeting Shiwu, who seemed to have no interest in talking, and played with the slingshot in his hand from time to time, as if this thing was more attractive to him. At this time, a subordinate came over and said in Cheng Baizhen's ear, "Boss, the guard just called and said that a man who calls himself Red Devil wants to see you. The other party said he is from Black Witch." Cheng Baizhen was stunned for a moment, then said gloomily, "Kick him away." "Wait. 15 looked over at this time. Black Witch's man? Why kick him away? It's a waste not to use such an interesting thing to kill time. Cheng Baizhen immediately smiled. Mr. 15 is right. He looked at his subordinates and changed his words. Hurry up and bring the man in. 15 played with the slingshot and said in a nonchalant tone, in addition, don't say I didn't remind you. As long as the guy has a sound brain, he will not rush into someone else's lair alone. Especially the Black Witch people. Hearing his words, Cheng Baizhen hurriedly picked up a walkie-talkie and said quickly, take a look around the camp. No, check the whole town carefully for me. Notify me immediately if you find a stranger. As the two of them were talking, 2 base soldiers came with a stranger. Cheng Baizhen looked up and observed the man wearing a cloak, a hood, and a wooden mask of Ennio opera on his face. Are you from the Black Witch? Cheng Baizhen pretended to be pretentious, holding up a glass of wine and looking at him with a squint. Luo Yan didn't even look at Cheng Baizhen. The eyes in the mask looked at 15 from the moment he entered the hall. Black Witch, Red Ghost, he said concisely, and at the same time, opened the Wu Wang burning eyes, which had already seen 15's information thoroughly. Intermediate level 1. God hidden eagle eye. No secret method. Very weak. At this time, Cheng Baizhen suddenly smashed the wine glass, stood up and sneered, you dare to come here alone, you are very brave. Luo Yan then moved his eyes and fell on Cheng Baizhen. I'm enough to raise this place. Then why don't I dare to come? Cheng Baizhen was stunned. He really didn't expect that this guy wearing a mask and looking timid would say such domineering words. He coughed dryly. Suddenly, 20 soldiers from the camp rushed into the hall, holding rifles and pointing them at Luo Yan. Cheng Baizhen sneered, young man, don't be too confident, or you may miss a corner. Luo Yan seemed not to see these people and guns. He glanced at the grey-haired 15 and said nothing. Cheng Baizhen thought Luo Yan was scared and was relieved. At this time, the voice of his subordinates sounded in the headset. The boss didn't find it. The voice didn't sound clear, as if it was mixed with the sound of the wind. Cheng Baizhen didn't think much about it, and he put down the stone in his heart when he heard this. In his heart, he greatly despised the Black Witch and the Red Ghost, thinking that they were just bluffing. What? You have nothing to say? Cheng Baizhen sat on the sofa, took out a cigar, lit it and took a puff. Then it's my turn to speak. I want that batch of goods. I won't return it to you, Black Wizard. And you just come here casually. Where do you think this is? Since you are here, you have to leave something behind. Otherwise, don't even think about going back. Luo Yan said lightly in the mask, what do you want me to leave behind? Cheng Baizhen glanced at 15 and saw that the latter was still relaxed and didn't take the so-called Red Devil seriously, so he felt relieved. He laughed out loud. Let me think about it. Well, at least you have to take off the mask, right? The little star who wanted to get close to Jiuying, but failed leaned on Cheng Baizhen and said with a smile, Brother Sen, just taking off the mask is not enough. If you ask me, take off all his clothes and throw him into the ice and snow to freeze. He will be able to wake up and realize who he is facing now. Cheng Baizhen laughed out loud. Ali is right. He was just about to ask the soldiers to take off the mask of the Red Ghost first, when he saw the other party take off the mask on his own initiative, revealing a face with cold lines and red eyes. Oh, you are still quite young. The woman named Ali laughed. You have red eyes and are infected with red poison. I'm afraid you won't live long. You dare to be so presumptuous, Brother Sen. If you don't show him some power, everyone will bully you in the future. Cheng Baizhen nodded repeatedly and belittled the Black Witch again, thinking that this organization was not very good. Otherwise, how could they even want a sick person infected with red poison? Boy, did you hear me? Take off your clothes and run around the camp. If I'm happy watching you, I will let you go. Luo Yan asked calmly, what if I don't do it? Ali lay on Cheng Baizhen's chest and gently stroked the man's chest with one finger. That's easy. Tear off his tendons and throw him outside the camp. It just so happens that a group of hungry wolves have come there recently. I guess they will like this feast. Cheng Baizhen nodded. Yeah, that's a good idea. Boy, now you know what to do. Luo Yang nodded gently. Then he stopped talking. He walked slowly towards Cheng Baizhen. Stop. Cheng Baizhen yelled. Who told you to come here? I order you to stop. Ali hugged Cheng Bazin tightly and said, Brother Sen, he is so scary, why don't you kill him? Cheng Bazin raised the corner of his mouth and waved his big hand. Kill this kid. Bang 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 bang. Gunshots rang out. But it was not from the guns of the soldiers in the hall, but from outside the building. The French windows around the hall were blown up, and the bodies of the soldiers in the camp were shaking, and blood and flesh were flying everywhere. The blood fell on the pillars, on the carpet, on the table, and on Cheng Bazin's body. In the blood that was falling like raindrops, Luo Yan stepped forward and walked towards Cheng Bazin's sofa. Chapter 374, Killing Field. Coyote Camp. Hearing the gunshots, everyone retreated into the house or tent, not daring to meddle in other people's business. As for Cheng Bazin's men, about 17 or 18 of them followed Liu to deliver the goods, and another 20 or so were transferred by Cheng Bazin. So, there were less than 20 people left under the shopping mall building. The soldiers were about to rush into the building when they heard someone shouting, "Don't move." Everyone looked over and saw a burly figure with a cigarette in his mouth and an aircraft cannon in both hands, shouting, "You are surrounded. Surrender and you won't be killed." The soldiers looked around, except for this man. Where else was there? Then they came to their senses. The other party was confident that one person could kill all of their people, so they dared to say that. Think about it. With the speed and power of the machine gun, after a round of shooting, there is no reason for the 20 people on their side to survive. They didn't dare to act rashly. In the shopping mall, the gray-haired 15 hid behind a pillar. No matter how arrogant he was, he didn't dare to use his body to experience the power of the sniper rifle. His magic was the super sensory eagle eye. When he moved just now, 15's pupils had changed. Using eagle eye, he saw snipers hiding in several buildings outside the camp. He immediately cursed Cheng Bazin for being incompetent. He had already reminded this man to be careful. Black Witch would not come just one person. He was different from Cheng Bazin, even though he didn't know much about Black Witch because of his low level. But when entering the Northland, his boss mentioned more than once that he should be careful of this organization. Just now, he saw that Cheng Bazin didn't take him seriously and thought that Black Witch was arrogant, so he sent someone to settle accounts with Cheng. Now he knows that this is not the case. On the sofa, Cheng Bazin was sweating profusely. The woman next to him was even more scared and kept screaming. If it were normal, Cheng Bazin would have slapped her and thrown her. But now he was also scared out of his wits. 20 or so men were killed in the blink of an eye. The gunshot came from far away. It was obvious that sniper equipment was used to kill all his men in an instant. There must be at least 10 sniper rifles. He only had one such killing weapon. The difference in strength was too great. Cheng Bazin couldn't help but look at 15, but the gray-haired man was no longer in his original position. Cheng Bazin cursed in his heart, but at this time, even if he cursed 15's ancestors, it would be useless. Cheng Bazin could only barely calm down and put on a smile and said, "Mr. Chiggy, let's talk it over. Everything can be discussed. Can you shut up?" Cheng Bazin looked at Ali, who was screaming next to him, and slapped her so hard that her head buried in the sofa and she couldn't scream anymore. He looked at Luo Yan again, but found that the other party didn't stop at all and had no intention of discussing. Cheng Bazin gritted his teeth and shouted, "Mr. Shiwu, let's kill him together. Otherwise, even if I die, he won't let you go." After that, he burst into a wave of energy and then pounced on Luo Yan like a leopard. At the same time, the pillar where Shiwu was hiding suddenly made a poof sound, and a hole exploded on the surface of the pillar, and a steel ball flew towards Luo Yan like a sniper bullet. But Luo Yan just tilted his head, and the steel ball flying towards his forehead hit the air. Shiwu behind the pillar said how. He shot the steel ball behind the pillar so that Luo Yan would not notice it, but the other party seemed to know that he was going to take action, and he also saw through the trajectory so he could easily avoid it. At the same time, Luo Yan's cloak floated up and the ring dragon broke through the air. In the sound of the sea tide that appeared out of thin air, the knife was simple and heavy, and he chopped at Cheng Bazin, who was rushing over. As soon as Luo Yan's longsword came out, 15 knew that Cheng Bazin was no match for him. He dodged from behind the pillar, and the slingshot was straightened, and another steel ball shot out. Ding. The steel ball hit Luo Yan's long sword, knocking the sharp sword to one side. 15 breathed a sigh of relief, but heard Cheng Bazin scream, and blood spurted out from his forehead, and then his body broke into two halves during the sprint. Between Cheng Bazin's broken body, a twisted ripple passed, and the shape was outlined by the splattered blood mist. Seeing this scene, 15 sucked in a breath of cold air. Only then did he realize that, although he had successfully knocked the red ghost's sword off, the other party's sword energy, that had been released first, still attacked and killed Cheng Bazin. 15 made a prompt decision, and turned around and left. He had never thought of avenging Cheng Bazin. But at this moment, there was a sound of wind behind him. 15 looked back and couldn't help but feel his scalp tingling. It turned out to be the man called Shiggy. There was a whistling wind around him. He seemed to have used some secret method and chased after him at a very fast speed. Shiwu guessed right. Luo Yan used the secret method, Fengdian, and chased after him. A few dragon scales quietly emerged from his cloak and on his back, emitting an amber light that could not be seen by the naked eye. With the blessing of the incomplete dragon transformation posture, the ring dragon twisted and slashed, bringing up a bad wind and removing one of Shiwu's arms. The grey-haired man groaned and suddenly changed his route. His yuan li burst out with all his strength, biting the slingshot with his mouth instead of his arm and pointing it at Luo Yan. When he opened his mouth again, several steel balls carrying the yuan li breath burst out in all directions, but did not attack Luo Yan. Luo Yan did not dare to be careless. All the dragon scales on his body stood up and covered his whole body. The whites of his eyes suddenly turned black, and his pupils became more and more bright red. The scattered amber light finally appeared and condensed into the shadow of a lizard dragon beast behind Luo Yan. Luo Yan kept moving. At this time, several steel balls, with the help of the pillars and walls on both sides, were madly ejected in the limited space, forming a three-dimensional killing net. Luo Yan crashed into this killing net. In the middle, the cloak on his body suddenly exploded into pieces, but that was all. When those steel balls hit Luo Yan's body, they did not smash Luo Yan's bones as Shiwu thought. They hit the scales on Luo Yan's body, and with a sound, they deformed and fell to the ground. Shiwu's pupils shrank. This is his killer. Unexpectedly, it only exploded the red ghost's cloak, but not even a hair of the person was hurt. At the other end, dragon scales appeared, and the speed exploded. Luo Yan passed Shiwu in an instant. A dull sound of breaking through the air sounded in the hall. In this huge sound, Shiwu's body was like being hit by a speeding train, and it suddenly bounced into the air. Then a large wave of blood spurted out from his waist and abdomen. A huge wound was torn open on his waist, and he was almost cut in half. But even if he wasn't cut in half, such a big wound would be enough to kill the grey-haired man. The loud noise woke up the woman who had fainted after being slapped. When her vision came into focus, the woman couldn't help but tremble all over. Blood everywhere, and corpses. She saw Cheng Bazin's body broken into two halves, and also saw the body of the arrogant 15, now lying in a pool of blood. She was about to scream, but a pair of bright red eyes appeared in her field of vision. So Ali couldn't scream. Chapter 375. Follow Mr. Chig's lead. The carriage was shaking, and the road was quite bumpy, but Li Yu sat very steady. He had no restrictions, except that his weapons were taken away. The situation of other people was similar. They were intercepted on the way to other camps. There were not many blockers, but each of them was very skilled. In addition, they were well equipped and advanced. In less than 10 minutes, Li Yu's side, which had a clear advantage in numbers, was defeated. Almost all the people on the Huangquan side were killed, and only the drivers and other non-threatening people were spared. The people on Li Yu's side were also threatening, but for some reason they were not killed, but their weapons were taken away. Therefore, Liuc, who was sitting opposite the carriage, winked at Li Yu. Li Yu had worked with her for a long time, and knew what Liuc meant by listening to her music. She knew whether to take action. Li Yu shook his head decisively. The other party took away their weapons without restrictions, obviously not taking them seriously. Moreover, the previous battle also showed that among these people, only he and Liuc could resist a little. No one else could. Even if they took action now, the two could get away by chance. What about the others? Li Yu couldn't abandon his brothers and run away. If he was such a person, he would have gone it alone long ago, and why would he continue to follow Cheng Baizhen? Liuc shrugged her shoulders and said nothing. Suddenly she said, "Are we going back to the camp?" Li Yu looked and saw that it was true. Not far ahead was the coyote camp. There was no reason for the robbers not to know that their convoy started from the coyote camp. There was only one possibility for them to dare to come back after robbing things. The camp had changed hands and was controlled by someone else. Black Witch? This thought suddenly flashed through Li Yu's mind. Then this thought occupied his entire mind. The convoy drove all the way into the town, into the camp, and into Cheng Baizhen's restricted area. 2 supply trucks parked nearby, and other escort vehicles arrived at the entrance of the shopping mall. Li Yu saw a one-armed man gestured indifferently, asking him to get off the car. Li Yu jumped down very cooperatively and followed the one-armed man into the shopping mall. As soon as he entered the door and came to the first floor of the renovated shopping mall, Li Yu heard a woman shouting. Before he could see the figures in the building clearly, "Li Yu, save me." Li Yu looked over and found that it was Cheng Baizhen's woman, the former little star Gongli. Gongli was now pale, her hands and feet were tied, and she sat on the cold ground, crying so hard that her makeup was all washed off. Next to her, there were more than 20 soldiers from the camp. They were disarmed and squatting on the ground with rifles pointed at them so that these people dared not act rashly. At this time, someone came out. It was a man in a cloak, and his age could not be seen because he was wearing a wooden mask of a nuo opera on his face. Li Yu was at a loss. Then he heard the one-armed man leading the way in front say in a deep voice, "This is Mr. Chigi." Li Yu looked at the man called Chigi and heard him say from the mask, "Cheng Baizhen betrayed us, detained our supplies, and refused to return them. Now he is dead, together with the people of Huangquan. The body is still up there. If you are interested, you can go up and take a look." Li Yu was shocked. Black Witch? Red Ghost? What he was worried about really became a reality. Black Witch is just as he guessed. Although no one knows their origins, this is not an ordinary organization. He had already reminded Cheng Baizhen, but unfortunately, Cheng Baizhen didn't take it seriously. Now, they came to kill him. And killed Cheng Baizhen and the people of Huangquan in one fell swoop. Li Yu took a deep breath. "Mr. Chigi, how are you going to deal with us?" Luo Yan in the mask said lightly, "You will replace Cheng Baizhen and continue to be my agent. I will provide weapons and personnel. I hope you won't let me down." Li Yu was stunned. He didn't expect the other party to be so easy to deal with. He couldn't help asking, "Mr. Chigi, do you believe me?" Luo Yan stayed in the camp for 3 days. From the casual chats between the residents and soldiers in the camp, he had already figured out what kind of person Li Yu was. He also knew that Li Yu's old subordinates had long been at odds with Cheng Baizhen. That's why he made such a decision. Hearing this, Luo Yan said, "No, I don't believe you. If you want me to trust you, you need to fight for it yourself. I'm arranging it this way now because you have no better choice. If you don't rely on us, how are you going to explain to the people of Huangquan that their goods were lost, but you are still alive?" Yes. Although Luo Yan decided to let Li Yu replace Cheng Baizhen and become the owner of this camp, but it doesn't mean that he will trust Li Yu. Compared with the blind trust of idealism, he believes that interests can bind each other. Li Yu couldn't explain to Huangquan that he had robbed Huangquan's goods, but didn't kill Li Yu. So just like Luo Yan said, in this case, Li Yu had no better choice than to cooperate with him. Li Yu also understood this, smiled bitterly, nodded and said, "From now on, I will follow Mr. Kai Jiuying's lead." He surrendered. Whether it was combat power, equipment or even means, the two sides were far apart. What else could he do if he didn't surrender? Luo Yan nodded and said, "I will send a group of people over later to make up for the soldiers lost in your base. Huangquan will definitely ask about it and will come back. It doesn't matter, I will greet them personally when the time comes." Luo Yan looked at the female star on the ground. "As for this woman, leave it to you to deal with." When Li Yu still didn't quite understand the meaning of Kai Jiuying's words, he heard him say, "This woman has been instigating Cheng Baizhen to cut my tendons and throw me outside the camp to feed the wolves. After leaving this, Luo Yan strode away without looking at the hall again. Guanpeng, Wei Junai and others followed closely. In a short while, the people from the Black Witch division had left. At this time, Liuc and others came in. Old Li, what's the situation? Liuc asked. Liu closed his eyes and exhaled. I'll tell you the details later. I have something to deal with first. He walked towards Gongli. Gongli tried to smile brightly. Little Li, no, brother Li. I will follow you from now on. Don't worry, I will serve you well. Unexpectedly, Liu shouted, shut up. I remember now, the boss has changed since he took you in. He was originally a peaceful person, but it was your instigation that made him ambitious. Being ambitious is not a bad thing, but when there is no matching strength, it is a disaster. Like this time. If you hadn't instigated the boss to kill Mr. Chigi, maybe the boss wouldn't die. You actually want to throw him into the snow to feed the wolves. You are so brave. Gongli was so scared that she trembled all over. Brother Li, you won't throw me outside the camp to feed the wolves. No, let me go. I won't talk nonsense in the future. Look, they are all gone. You let me go quietly. No one knows. Liu sneered. Don't worry, I won't throw you into the snow to feed the wolves. I'm not as cruel as you. But, you have to die. This is what Mr. Chigi meant. It is also his test of me. If I don't kill you, I'm afraid none of us in this camp will survive. Gongli shook her head. No, no. Let me go. Let me go. Liu said nothing more, walked behind her, stretched out his hands, and held her head. He whispered in the woman's ear, go down and apologize to my elder brother. After that, he crossed his hands. Click. Gongli's head shook slightly, then her eyes widened, and her head tilted to one side strangely. Chapter 376 There is a taste called home. On the same day, Ma Shuo from the Changping Mecha Corps sat in a mecha carrier with the window open, breathing out his hands. It's so cold. It's really painful to be out on duty in this kind of weather. When I get back to the city in a few days, I'll go to the temple to burn incense, to wash away this bad luck. Xiaorong, a mecha master sitting in the back, stood up suddenly and closed the window while wearing a driving suit that showed off a good figure. You are sick. You opened the window and complain about the cold without turning on the heater in the car. You must be crazy. Ma Shuo laughed dryly. Don't you want to breathe some fresh air? While the two were talking, the transport vehicle stopped, and the driver in front shouted, Team Ma, we have arrived at the designated coordinates. Okay. Ma Shuo stood up and patted Xiaorong on the shoulder. Go, pick up the mecha master we met halfway. What's his name? Right, Qiyun. Call him down too. After Xiaorong left, Ma Shuo picked up the communicator and said, all teams, be alert. Be careful of the behemoth. Keep an eye on the radar. After that, he got into the mecha carrier cabin at the back. After a moment, the carrier cabin unfolded, and a mecha sat up from it and left the carrier cabin. In the cab, Ma Shuo controlled the mecha to walk forward, and after a moment, he saw a ruin. It's really tragic. Pilot Qiyun, did you hear that? Is this your base? A weak voice sounded in the communication channel. Yes, this is our base. Ma Shuo fell into silence. A few days ago, the ground monitoring department of the Changping City Corps discovered a group of suspicious signals. Judging from the spectral color of that group of signals, it should be a dominant level behemoth. But this group of signals disappeared after only a few seconds. Because the signal is not far from Changping City, for safety reasons, the Changping Corps sent a team to investigate the place where the signal appeared. Ma Shuo's luck was not good, and he drew a bad lot, so he could only leave the underground city with his partner Xiaorong. Unexpectedly, on the way, he encountered an old-fashioned mecha with exhausted energy and collided with Qiyun, who escaped from the base. Through Qiyun's description, Ma Shuo was basically sure that the monitoring department's equipment did not malfunction at the time. Now that he came to the scene, he was even more sure. Next, some people entered the ruins of the base to take samples and started testing with various instruments. The most important test here is to detect the special radiation emitted by the behemoth. Once the radiation reaches a standard of the overlord level, it can be confirmed that there is a overlord monster here. Not long after, Ma Shuo received the news. The radiation level of the monster reached the standard of the overlord level. He smiled bitterly, took out his mobile phone, and reported the situation to the underground city. Asterisk 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 unknowingly. It was the winter solstice. That night, Luo Yan went to the Red Gate. The streets and alleys were decorated with lights. Under the big banyan tree in the small square of Temple Street, there were even more red lanterns. The underground city gradually had a hint of the New Year atmosphere. Luo Yan came to Jude building and walked into the quiet room that he often used. Yang Tao came with Wenzhou. Yang Tao also brought a plate of dumplings and put it on the table, looking at Luo Yan expectantly. Teacher, we have dumplings on the winter solstice. Try them. I made them this afternoon. Luo Yan couldn't help but feel a little dazed. Some faded pictures flashed before his eyes. In those pictures, there were warm lights, figures kneading dough in the hut, and bursts of hearty laughter. These once familiar pictures now seem like a lifetime ago. Teacher? Yang Tao called out softly when she saw Luo Yan didn't respond. Luo Yan came to his senses, nodded, and picked up a pair of chopsticks. Wenzhou left the meditation room wisely. At this time, Luo Yan picked up a dumpling and took off his mask with his other hand, revealing his young but stern face. He tried to take a bite, feeling the softness of the dumpling skin, tasting the deliciousness of the meat stuffing mixed with the vegetable juice. The taste of home gradually permeated his taste buds. Soon, a dumpling was finished. Yang Tao blinked. How is it, teacher? Not bad. The meat filling is just a little bit salty. Luo Yan rarely commented, then put on the mask. You have laid a good foundation and awakened the Shenzang. Tonight, I will teach you the elementary skill Ying Gong. Go to the practice room to prepare. Wenzhou and I will talk about some business and then find you. Yang Tao looked at the dumplings left on the plate. He was not concerned about the skills, but the food. Teacher, don't you eat a few more? Luo Yan's eyes flashed with a smile. I'll have someone pack it up and take it back. Hearing this, Yang Tao's eyes lit up. Then I'll go prepare it first. After the girl left, Wenzhou came in. Master, after this period of hard work, we have basically digested the assets from various aspects. In addition, according to your instructions, 1 million work points have been given to Iron Horse, and Lao Guan and his men have also begun to plan to recruit soldiers. Also, Black Owl and Dark Blood have jointly sent an invitation to our Red Gate to attend the annual New Year's Eve banquet on New Year's Eve. Mountain Eagle said that they, Flower Shan, also attended in the past. It's called a night banquet, but in fact it's a meeting of large and small organizations to define their respective spheres of influence in the new year. Here is the invitation. While speaking, the fake Taoist took out a red invitation from his pocket and handed it to Luo Yan respectfully. Luo Yan took it, glanced at it casually, and put it aside. I will attend then. The two discussed some matters within the organization, such as the next development direction, etc. After Wenzhou left, Luo Yan's mobile phone received a message. This was a message sent from the Black Witch. The rewards for the last team mission have been distributed. Luo Yan received 1,500 contribution points and 5 million work points. But these are just the ones on the surface. The gains behind the scenes include a survivor camp, some of Cheng Basin's personal assets, and 2 supply trucks from the Huanquan organization. They are full of guns and ammunition, which are very valuable. Luo Yan accepted them without hesitation and used them to arm his own people. Put away the phone and go to the practice room. Luo Yan carefully explained to Yang Tao the first level of the Drinking Clouds Kung Fu practice method, which he bought from the Black Witch online store for 200 contribution points, and guided her in practice. A night passed like this, and Luo Yan returned to the academy the next morning. As soon as he arrived in the classroom, he heard the students talking inside. As soon as Luo Yan walked in, he was pulled over by Zengshan. Lao Luo, have you heard, Captain D? No, he should be called the City Lord now. Anyway, City Lord D Zeng has just announced something big. He plans to popularize visualization and lower the threshold. Anyone over 12 years old can practice the essence building technique. If you meet the requirements, you can practice elementary skills, and if you can enter the Mecha Academy, you can obtain intermediate skills. In this way, in 10 years, most of the residents in the underground city will know how to visualize. Chapter 377 How much time do humans have left? Guangling City, Municipal Building Conference Hall. I disagree. Guangling City Education Minister Lu Cheng shook his head and said, students should focus on their studies. In recent years, due to the impact of natural disasters, the useless theory of studying has already emerged. If we promote the popularization of visualization at this time, how many students will focus on studying? By then, everyone will learn visualization, and no one will learn cultural knowledge. How can our science and technology culture be passed on? I admit that visualization is indeed important, but can visualization alone be relied on to protect this city, or even save the world? On the other side of the table, Wu Shimo, the Minister of Security who originally had a winning ticket, but failed to sit on the throne of the city lord, picked up the cup, drank a sip of tea, and nodded. I also agree with Minister Lu's point of view, and as a practitioner of visualization, I want to put forward my own views. It is easy to get started in visualization practice, but it is difficult to improve, and it becomes more and more difficult as you go on. What is the difficulty? First, it is difficult to obtain the skills. Even if you make enough contributions and can exchange for the skills you want, it is hard to say whether the skills you exchange for are suitable for you. Second, it is a problem of cultivation resources. It is okay to have cultivation resources for the basic, elementary, and even advanced realms. But when it comes to Tongsun, Karen, and even higher realms, cultivation resources are decreasing exponentially. Based on the current number of practitioners, there are still more monks than porridge. Once visualization becomes popular, the gap in cultivation resources will only get bigger and bigger. Then I can imagine that some people may take risks in order to get more cultivation resources, or even do something that is against the will of heaven and earth. Yang Zhen, director of the Construction Bureau, said lightly, visualization is a treasure of ancient civilization and a commonwealth of all mankind. It should not be owned and controlled by a small number of people. This is not conducive to the development of human civilization. Especially after the opening of the Yama space and the outbreak of the giant beast disaster, mankind has formed a community with a shared future. Everyone should work together instead of setting barriers and giving privileges. Besides, even if it is not popularized, books like Building Yuanju and some more common elementary exercises have long been popular. Not to mention the underground city, there are also many survivors practicing on the surface. Now what City Lord D is doing is nothing more than conforming to public opinion. Since there will not be much difference whether it is promoted or not, why not just promote it directly among the people? Information Minister Fang Yao smiled and said, I support Liu Yang's opinion. Of course, I think what the minister said makes sense. However, I think no matter how difficult the problem is, there is a solution. For example, Minister Lu's worry is that students will not focus on their studies. That's simple. City Lord D also said that, although it needs to be popularized, some conditions will be set. In this case, wouldn't it solve the problem by bundling academic performance with visualization techniques or cultivation resources? In fact, the Mecha Academy also does this, and it already has a mature system. When the time comes, the Ministry of Education will refer to this system and teach visualization or provide cultivation resources based on what kind of results are achieved. Then students will have to focus on their academic performance, and it will even ignite their enthusiasm for learning. Ministers or directors expressed their opinions and discussed it. Some agreed, some opposed. Zeng, who was sitting at the top, looked much better than before. It seemed that his injuries in the Battle of the Forbidden Land had recovered a lot. He was calm and waited until everyone had expressed their opinions, discussed and even clashed with each other. He pressed his hands down to signal everyone to be quiet and then said, everyone, D's promotion of the popularization of visualization is not a whim or a decision made for political achievements. Zeng looked at the members of the corps who were listening and nodded slightly. On a large screen behind him, a chart appeared with a lot of data on it. The most obvious one was a curve chart. Zeng said, please look, this is the data collected by the ground monitoring department in the past year. From the curve, it can be seen intuitively that the Yama space has become more and more active in the past year. especially in early September. The opening range of the Yama space reached the highest value of data that can be recorded after the natural disaster. In addition, the activities of giant beasts have become more and more frequent in the past year. This year, the number of giant beast incidents handled by our underground city is more than the previous few years combined. I have a hunch that perhaps a disaster similar to the giant beast disaster or even greater than that is brewing, and it may happen soon. The conference hall was silent. Even officials such as Lu Cheng and Wu Shimo who oppose the popularization of visualization techniques were silent now. Because data does not lie. Looking at the thrilling curve, no one can relax. Zeng said in a deep voice, "Of course I understand your concerns, Minister Lu and Minister Wu. But I'm more worried about how much time is left for mankind. Is it a century? Or 50 years? Or 10 years? Or even less? Ladies and gentlemen, perhaps we can't worry so much. We can't worry about such long-term things. We should focus on the present. Promote the art of visualization, and try our best to discover outstanding talents. Otherwise, it won't be long before the core will face a situation where there are mechs but no drivers. This year, we have sacrificed a total of 26 mecha divisions. Ladies and gentlemen, the core counted last year, and there were only about 70 mecha divisions in service. Now we have lost 1/3 of our manpower. It is difficult to ensure a sufficient number of mecha divisions relying solely on the replenishment of the Mecha Academy. So as Minister Fang said, will there be difficulties in promoting visualization? Yes, but we must find a way to overcome it, rather than shelving it because of difficulties. Basically, after these words, coupled with those cold data, no one in the meeting room opposed this policy anymore. Zeng then discussed various details with them. Just as the meeting was about to end, Liang Jian suddenly walked in with a serious look. It was unknown what he said in Zeng's ear, but everyone saw that Zeng's face suddenly changed. Then, Zeng stood up and said solemnly, Changping City asked us for help. They found a spectrum signal of a dominant beast, and the signal has been moving. According to the route map deduced by the computer, there is an 89% chance that this signal will pass through Changping City. Changping City has now issued a level 1 alert and asked for help from our city, as well as Qingyang, Pingyao, Yanxi and other cities. The meeting room suddenly became quiet. Then everyone stood up with a serious look on their faces. Chapter 378 The Eve of Departure. In the training hall, Luo Yan took out the Yuan Peiji that he had just exchanged from the giant beast strategic mansion. This kind of medicine requires a lot of exchange points, and 500 contribution points can be exchanged for 1. The advantage is that the Yuan Peiji can speed up his cultivation, and it can be used in the advanced realm, and even the Tangxuan realm. The higher the realm, the less obvious its effect. But for the intermediate and advanced realms, the effect of the Yuan Peiji is still very obvious. Luo Yan exchanged 10 in one breath, and directly spent 5,000 contribution points. Now there are only 90,000 contribution points left in the strategic mansion. At this time, he picked up a Yuan Peiji, put it to his nose, and took a deep breath. He sucked all the medicine inside into his body. Suddenly, the Yuan force in Luo Yan's body boiled up, like water falling into an oil pan, and exploded all at once. The Yuan force C in the Danshan directly set off a huge wave, sweeping over the Danshan, and washing all the meridians and acupoints in Luo Yan's body like a flood. It made him feel like his body was expanding. He was not in a hurry, and he operated viewing mountains and seas, visualizing the majestic mountains and seas, and letting his mind be magnificent, accommodating the world. As the visualization technique was running, the sound of surging sea waves rang out in the training hall, and the energy of the space roared, gathering from all directions, like a raging tide pouring into Luo Yan's body. Faced with such a turbulent wave of energy, a few dragon scales quietly floated up behind Luo Yan, and his body functions immediately climbed, withstanding the scouring of the energy tide. The surging energy washed Luo Yan's meridians, flesh, bones and internal organs. Every time it was washed, it further tempered Luo Yan's body, making his body far stronger than that of practitioners who practiced other techniques. This is a peculiarity of viewing mountains and seas. The later it is, the stronger the body of the practitioner will be, and the deeper the energy will be. but the progress of this technique is too slow in the early stage. If you want to speed up the progress, you have to invest a lot of cultivation resources. However, for ordinary practitioners, where do the large resources come from in the early stage? Therefore, not many people choose to practice this technique. Looking at the entire academy, only Luo Yan and Wei Fenghe practice it. Others practice techniques that do not require too many resources and are not too slow to practice. Although the foundation is not as good as viewing mountains and seas, the progress will not be too slow. As long as the talent is not too bad, basically everyone can be promoted to the advanced level. When you reach the advanced level, you are also a top figure in the dungeon. At this time, you can get a lot of resources and then feedback to practice and improve your physical strength. Of course, even so, in terms of basics, you can't be compared with the practitioners who practice viewing mountains and seas. You can only shorten the distance, but you can't be on par with them, let alone surpass them. At this time, Luo Yan guided the Yuanli to flow into Danshan and merge into the Yuanli ocean through the operation of the technique. Boom. The Yuanli ocean roared, vibrated, and expanded, and gradually a vortex naturally formed on the sea surface. As soon as a vortex appeared, Luo Yan clearly felt that the speed at which he absorbed the Yuanli of heaven and earth became faster. When Luo Yan practiced, his Yuanshan phantom was not idle either. The phantom was behind Luo Yan, sitting cross-legged in the air, pinching his fingers and closing his eyes. With each breath, a large amount of Yuanli was absorbed into his body. A strange light shone inside the Yuanshan phantom, making it look like a human-shaped oven, as if a bright and dazzling light was flowing inside its body. The green dragon that was entangled with the phantom was also swimming non-stop, and from time to time it absorbed Yuanli into its body, and then spit out something similar to an inner elixir. Repeating this, the body of the green dragon rose and swelled slightly, and from time to time it dropped 1 or 2 green scales. After an unknown amount of time, Luo Yan's practice was complete, and he stopped practicing. He opened his eyes and slowly exhaled a white breath, only to feel that the Yuan He in his Danshan was expanding and growing a little stronger. According to this, it is expected that he can complete the practice of the 5th level of the intermediate level before the new year. Then he will exchange for a marrow washing agent and complete the Great Perfection realm within a week. In this way, he can sprint to the advanced level. He stood up. Luo Yan pushed open the door of the training hall, only to find that it was already dark, and it was already dusk. Just outside the door, he saw Bei, a girl wearing a harpy rabbit hat, pulling the rabbit ears on the hat boredly, and circling back and forth in front of the hall. When she heard the door open, she turned her head, and then showed a strange smile on her face. Hehe. Student Luo, have you finished training? Luo Yan nodded. Why are you here? Bei jumped over like a rabbit and took Luo Yan's hand. Let's go. Everyone is making dumplings, waiting for you. Luo Yan raised his eyebrows slightly. It's already past the winter solstice. Why are we still making dumplings now? Who said that dumplings can only be made on the winter solstice? As he spoke, Bei took Luo Yan to the cafeteria. In the cafeteria, the students did not eat. Several people sat at a table, either kneading dough or making dumplings. Luo Yan, Bei, come quickly. Not far away, the 3rd year student Jiuying waved his hand and greeted the 2 latecomers. Here, Hiheo, Jiuying, Liu Ruohan, Yang Lixi and others gathered around a table. Now with Luo Yan and Bei, the table was full of people. Hiheo picked up a piece of dough, raised it above his head and said, I'll knead the dough. Then he roared and slammed the dough on the table. The table fell apart, the dough fell to the ground, and the powder flew. A life teacher walked by and said, Table 7, damaging public property, remember to pay the money before leaving. Hiheo's face suddenly turned red. Jiuying held his forehead. Liu Ruohan looked to the other side, and Bei covered his mouth and laughed softly. Idiot. Stupid. Idiot. Hiheo glared at the 3 girls. What do you know? The dough needs to be beaten hard, so that the dumpling skin will taste good later. Jiuying laughed. Yang Lixi told Luo Yan about his New Year's plan. He planned to go to Qingyang City to buy the plantation after the New Year. As for now, He just asked people to go to Jiuying City to open up relationships and channels and make preparations. At this time, except for Yang Lixi, the phones of other people rang at the same time. Luo Yan took out his phone and saw that it was a message from the core. It's an attack message. He put down his phone after reading it and looked around. Did you receive it too? Su Jiu and the other 3 girls nodded. Luo Yan also said instead of answering. Yang Lixi was confused. What attack message? He looked at the dark world outside the restaurant. Changping City sent us a request for help. A hegemony monster is heading towards them. The core has decided to send troops to support. The mecha divisions that received the attack message must report to the core headquarters tomorrow. Yang Lixi was silent. Of course he knew what a hegemony monster meant. Last time, because of a hegemony monster, the entire forbidden area was gone. Now another hegemony monster is heading straight for Changping City. If something goes wrong, the city will probably be destroyed. Don't worry about it. He picked up the dough. We only have one task tonight, making dumplings. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 379 Kunpeng. The vehicle was bumpy. Luo Yan didn't even shake. He just put his hand on the seat and sat as steady as a rock. At this moment, he was in the mecha carrier. 5 teams were heading to Changping City for support. This included the 3rd squad and 4th team, where Luo Yan was, as well as the teams of reserve pilots such as Hiheo, Su Jiu, and Liu Ruohan. The Guangling Corps had not fully recovered from the previous battle of the Misty Canyon. Now they can only send 5 teams to support, including 5 reserve pilots, which is really a helpless move. The Guangling Corps can no longer provide more manpower and mechs. If they had more, Guangling City's local defense would be a problem. Changping City naturally expressed understanding of this. Fortunately, the troops supporting Changping City were not only from Guangling City. The 3 underground cities of Qingyang, Pingyao, and Yanshi also lent a hand. In addition, Luo Yan also heard that the giant beast strategic house also responded and had sent the Xiangang dragon riders to help. In short, when we go to Changping City, remember that we are not the protagonists. The Changping Corps should not give us too big or too heavy tasks. We just need to do our best and do our own duties. Don't play personal heroism with me. Everything must be arranged and obeyed. Do you understand? The voice of the Captain Yan Wenbo sounded in the communication channel. As an experienced person who has participated in many battles, Yan Wenbo took on the responsibility of commanding the 5 teams to support Changping this time. After Luo Yan and others responded one after another, Yan Wenbo said again, the situation of the giant beast has been sent to you. You can check it yourself. Okay, contact me if you have any questions. That's it for now. After the communication channel became quiet, Luo Yan picked up his mobile phone and read the information sent. The information about the giant beast was not confirmed until yesterday, after being confirmed by the giant beast strategic office. It is certain that the dominant giant beast that is moving and passing through Changping City is Kun. Even the strategic office didn't have much information about this giant beast. They only knew that it was a dominant giant beast, a scale insect, and had an oversized body. Like the earth dragon, its body was a forbidden area. But unlike the earth dragon, Kun was in the sky and rarely came to the ground. In addition, the strategic office believed that Kun might evolve into Peng under certain circumstances. Once transformed into Peng, the creature might have the ability to travel between stars. Kun, a related description flashed through Luo Yan's mind. Zhuangzi in a chapter's IOI are recorded. There is a fish in the North Sea, named Kun. Kun is so big that no one knows how many thousands of miles it is. It turns into a bird, named Peng. Peng's back is so big that no one knows how many thousands of miles it is. When it flies in anger, its wings are like clouds hanging from the sky. Kun Peng. Sitting next to him, Bei covered his mouth with his hand and exhaled, saying, it's not nightmare level, but the dominant beast that can have 2 forms should only be Kun Peng. Luo Yang nodded slightly. As someone who has faced dominant beasts, Luo Yang knows very well how terrifying these beasts are. What's more, Kunpeng has 2 forms, so it is naturally stronger than the big cat. Fortunately, the Guanglin Corps is only going to provide support this time, and Changping is not their home ground, so they don't have to take the lead. In addition, with the participation of the Xiangang Dragon Riders, their teams should just go through the motions and come back soon. In a blink of an eye, 3 days passed. The Guangling convoy has entered the territory of Changping City. Luo Yan was looking out the window when he suddenly heard Yan Wenbo's voice on the communication channel. There is work. Just now the Changping Corps Command sent a request. The light energy matrix on the surface of Changping City was attacked. They have limited mechs left behind. We happen to be on the ground, so this job was assigned to us. Everyone prepare to attack. I will send the areas you are responsible for to the command console later. Luo Yan immediately stood up, came to the carrier, and entered the cockpit of the Mechabion. He put on the helmet, and with the help of the mechanical arm, connected the neuron wire to the full effect neural transmission board. Then all the interface drivers were turned on, and the empathy system was started to achieve neural docking. Immediately, the eyes of the Mechabion lit up with an orange-yellow light. The Mecha started. The command console had received the combat instructions sent by Yan Wenbo. Luo Yan and Bei were assigned to a group. They were responsible for the A13th area of the surface light energy matrix of Changping City. The light energy matrix is a light energy transmission network composed of a large number of light collecting panels. This is the main source of electricity for the underground city. The light collecting plate is a huge concave light collecting device with a transmission optical fiber embedded inside, which can move with the angle of the sun. They transmit the collected light energy to the conversion device through the optical fiber, thereby transmitting electricity to the underground city. If the light energy matrix is attacked or destroyed, it will cause various obstacles to the use of electricity in the underground city, and cause various effects. After receiving the combat instructions, Luo Yan opened the deck of the carrier cabin. After seeing the blue sky and white clouds outside the panoramic window, the jet behind the barn sprayed a faint blue flame, forming a thrust, allowing the mecha to rise from the carrier cabin. Then, under Luo Yan's control, it adjusted its posture and landed on the ground. Boom. The ground shook, the leaves of the nearby woods flew, many animals were frightened, and the forest bird soared into the sky. The Mechabion lifted its feet slightly off the ground, and the jet behind it sprayed several flames, pushing this mecha with a large shield and a long sword, to rush quickly to the combat site. Not far behind Luo Yan, the demon machine 8 gates, which looked like a white dog, also ran like a flying bird, following closely behind him like a white cloud. Soon, Luo Yan saw a silver-white light collecting plate on the ground. They looked like a white ocean, facing the sun, collecting the light and heat of the sun. Just in front of the light energy matrix, a mecha was fighting against strange insects that floated in the air and looked like anchors. These were parasites on Kun, anchor-headed giant fleas, with an average length of more than 40 meters. The male fleas have a particularly thick head and thorax, and the shape of an anchor is also more obvious. They are very strong and use their anchor-like heads to hit the target. The female fleas are slender, and the anchor shape of the head and thorax is not obvious, but they have dorsal horns. Its dorsal horns can emit bioenergy beams, which have certain penetrating and cutting power. Now, the mecha from Changping City at the light energy matrix was attacked by a group of anchor-headed giant fleas, and it was in danger. These anchor fleas are not difficult to deal with when there are 1 or 2 of them, but when there are many, it will be very troublesome. Just like now, the male fleas would stick to the mecha and hit it from time to time. The female fleas would keep a distance and use their back angles to fire beams. With the two working together, the mecha could basically only take the beating and had no energy left to fight back. Chapter 380, Joke. Luo Yan activated his skills, and an illusory blue sea suddenly appeared around the Bion. The waves on the sea were surging, and there was a roaring sound like a real tide. Behind the mecha, there were mountains. These illusory peaks were stacked layer by layer, like mountains on top of mountains, making the surface of the mecha glow with a faint yellow light, with rock textures emerging and exuding a majestic meaning. It was probably because the pressure of the breath released by the biome affected the anchor fleas. Most of the anchor fleas turned their heads and looked at the mecha with tiger stripes on a white background with big and small eyes. Then the male fleas sprayed air from both sides of their bodies, allowing them to quickly rush towards the biome. These giant beast parasites arched their heads, aimed their heads covered with thick armor in the shape of an anchor at the mecha, and rammed into it fiercely. Behind these male fleas, more than a dozen female fleas squirmed and rose into the air, and then light appeared on their back horns. The next second blood-red beam shot out from the horns, crashing into the virtual shadow of the blue sea around the mecha faster than the male fleas. As soon as those beams hit the virtual shadow of the blue sea set off huge waves, and the waves on the sea surface surged, forming an invisible resistance, which weakened the beams. In the end, it was like a drop in the ocean, unable to penetrate the blue sea and touch Luo Yan's mecha. Luo Yan controlled the mecha and asked Bian to raise his sword high, and the UN force rose and roared. When the sword was slashed down, the sky above the mecha suddenly darkened, and then thunders exploded, covering a huge fan-shaped area in front of the mecha, covering dozens of anchor-head giant fleas. Thunder. Kaijin. Now, Luo Yan no longer needs the Kaioen wheel to boost his UN force when using this combat skill. He used it casually, and the power was only higher than before. Dense lightning bolts entangled and struck down, causing the male fleas that didn't have time to hit the mecha to twitch all over and burst into electric fire. The female fleas also didn't care about firing beams anymore, curled up into a circle, tucked their heads into the deepest part, and desperately resisted the bombardment of the sky thunder. Boom. The sky thunder descended, exploding the earth and mountains. One by one, the anchor fleas, both male and female, were bombarded by lightning and filled with electric fire all over their bodies, burning to the ground. Even if they were struck to death, their bodies continued to twitch under the stimulation of the current, and the insect shells crackled and burst, causing the flesh and blood inside to splash everywhere. With one blow, almost all the anchor fleas that attacked this area died, and the few that remained were easily killed by the weirdness released by Bei. At this time, in the cab, Luo Yan saw a communication request on the command desk, which was sent by the Changping mecha on the opposite side. Luo Yan accepted it and pulled it into his group, and then a voice rang out. Saved. I almost thought I was going to die gloriously. I had already recorded my last words. Fortunately, you arrived in time. Thank you so much, my friends from Guangling. I'll treat you to a drink after the mission is over. Oh, by the way, I forgot to introduce myself. I'm Lin Zun, the mecha master of the 3rd squad of the 2nd squad of the Changping Corps. I know the name is a bit difficult to pronounce, but there's nothing I can do. I have a father who likes to show off his knowledge at home. I've wanted to change my name to a simpler one more than once, but the old man disagreed, saying that a name that is too straightforward is uncultured and has no connotation. Sorry, I was just talking about myself. I haven't asked for your advice yet. Facing this chatterbox, Luo Yan briefly reported his name. Then he turned on the Wu Wang burning eye to scan the surroundings, and found that there was no suspicious biological gray light in his field of vision. He was temporarily relieved. Looking at the formation window on the command console, it showed that other mechas were in a state of engagement. It seemed that there were quite a few anchor fleas attacking the light energy matrix. At this time, the words access to the Changping Core command system appeared on the command console. Soon these messages disappeared, and then a strange voice sounded in the public channel of the communicator. This is a Changping Core command. I won't say polite words. Brothers from Guangling, the power conversion unit of the light energy matrix is under attack. Please go to support as soon as possible. The specific coordinates are sent to you now. Soon, a new set of coordinates appeared on the screen of the command console. Then Yan Wenbo called out, which group is free? Go over and help first. Luo Yan immediately said, Zio Bei and I will go. Then he looked at the Changping mecha. Mecha Master Lin Zun said, you go, leave this to me. I was just careless just now. I won't let those bugs get it easily this time. The dark grey mecha took out a machine gun from an independent weapons depot at the back, and a long ammunition chain was hung on the gun. It seems that, as he said, there are enough ammunition and weapons, but there was no time and space to use them just now. Luo Yan immediately controlled the button to pass by the other party, and the Baman followed beside it. The two mechs went deep into the matrix and went to the power unit. In the dark grey Zhuangji, the handsome pilot Lin Zun looked at the button passing by the panoramic window and sighed. This guy is so strong. He killed most of the bugs with one blow. The captain is no better than this. At the same time, at the generator, set deep in the matrix, a fierce battle was going on here. The only two Zhuangjis entangled a large number of anchor-headed giant fleas, and the ground turrets and tank groups suffered heavy casualties. In addition to the anchor-headed giant fleas, there was also a giant beast attacking here. A real giant beast. This giant beast was all black, covered with a layer of uneven and heavy carapace, and its angular head looked like a turtle, but a bunch of black tentacles fluttered on its head. Its limbs were long and thin, making it look like a turtle with spider legs. This giant beast did not participate in the attack. It was using one of its long spider-like limbs to turn over a sideways tank. Inside the tank, the driver with a flat head had blood flowing from his scalp. He looked like he had lost his soul, with his eyes wide open, motionless like a wooden chicken. An older soldier next to him stood up, covering his forehead. Seeing the driver in a state of dismay, he quickly slapped his cheek. "Hey, Wang Hui, wake up." The driver named Wang Hui still did not respond, so the big man immediately slapped him. Pa. One side of Wang Hui's face was red and swollen, but he finally woke up. "Lao Shan." The big man Lao Shan smiled. "Are you finally awake? Don't give up, come and escape with me." Wang Hui nodded, but some images flashed through his mind. Just now, their car formation fired thousands of artillery, but was easily killed by a giant beast with a body like a turtle. In the tank, Wang Hui saw with his own eyes that the giant beast picked out the people in the vehicle and then rolled the people into its mouth with a tongue like a skewer's. For the giant beast, humans are too small, almost like ants. Therefore, the beast would not deliberately devour humans, but the beast seemed to enjoy it, which was what frightened Wang Hui. At this moment, the car body above their heads was suddenly torn apart, and then an eyeball appeared above their heads. Wang Hui could only see part of the huge eyeball, but it was not difficult to see that the pupil was full of Xing. Chapter 381, Mirage Turtle. The tank was opened, the huge pupils were ferocious, and the meaning of Xing. Wang Hui's mind was blank, and he didn't know how to react. But he heard the big man Lao Shan roaring, "You bastard, what are you looking at?" Then he picked up a rifle, pointed it at the eyeball above, and fired a volley of bullets. For the giant beast, the bullets from the rifle are probably like sand being thrown at humans. It's uncomfortable, but it's nothing. The black armored giant beast shrank its head, then roared, obviously irritated. A spider leg stood up high, and a red light rose from the end, emitting high temperature. Then it pierced into the tank. When the leg, that looked like a red-hot iron rod pierced in, Lao Shan suddenly pounced forward, and then the high-temperature leg pierced through the body of the tank, easily cutting the tank in two. Lao Shan fell next to Wang Hui, looked back, and smiled bitterly. Fuck. Wang Hui was already scared silly, his whole body trembling, his pupils dilated, looking at the giant beast that completely appeared in his field of vision above. Human vision is limited, especially under the giant beast. It is difficult to accommodate such a large object. Therefore, Wang Hui can only see part of the body of the giant beast. Even so, the impact of the picture at this moment is so great that Wang Hui, as a human, has stopped his brain. Facing the giant beast, the insignificance of human beings is exposed. Wang Hui had no idea, just sitting in the wreckage of the tank, staring at the giant beast retracting its spider legs, lowering its head, and slowly opening its mouth. Next to him, the big man Lao Shan kept yelling and waving his arms, trying to let the young soldier escape. Unfortunately, Wang Hui couldn't hear anything at this time. His spirit and his attention were firmly attracted by the giant beast above. He could neither hear Lao Wang's roar nor other sounds. He was like being isolated from the outside world and couldn't hear any sound. He just saw the giant beast open its mouth. A large ball of fishy saliva gushed out of its mouth, and a tongue that kept stretching out of its mouth. The tongue was black and blue all over, with an enlarged root and barbs on the surface of the tongue. But if you look closely, you will find that those barbs are actually human arms. Those arms are also black and blue, and have palms and 5 fingers. These special barbs waved and captured, and quickly grabbed Wang Hui's head. Now Wang Hui knew how this giant beast rolled up humans. No wonder humans are so small, it can actually wrap them with its tongue without falling. It turned out that it was the credit of these barbs. Seeing that one of the arms was already in front of him, at this moment, a flame hit the big head of the giant beast fiercely, knocking the head of the giant beast to one side. Then more flames broke through the air, forming a dense attack, blasting the head of the giant beast to one side, and the tongue full of human arms was also thrown away. Then a huge, deformed warhead, still glowing red and emitting high temperature, hit the tank with a bang, and then rolled to the ground. Then one after another, the deformed warheads fell to the ground, making a continuous clanking sound. Only then did Wang Hui hear other sounds. He heard the roar of the giant beast, and the loud sound of boom, boom, boom like the beat of a war drum. The earth was shaking, and the next second, the light above Wang Hui's head suddenly dimmed. The soldier's pupils dilated slightly, and he saw a blurry light and shadow passing in front of him, and then hit the giant beast, setting off a strong wind. After a burst of flying sand and rocks, Wang Hui saw a mecha appear next to him. The mecha was silver white with black lines similar to tiger patterns, and scales appeared on the outer armor. It was hitting the head of the giant beast with a shield, and pushing it away. The 4 spider-like long legs of the giant beast desperately nailed into the ground, trying to withstand the impact of the mecha. At this time, the back of the mecha suddenly spurted out blue flames, forming a huge driving force, pushing the giant beast back suddenly. The hot airflow knocked Wang Hui to the ground, and when he got up again, his wrist suddenly tightened. The soldier turned around and saw a smile on Liu Shan's wrinkled face. His purple lips opened, but he didn't know what to say. Wang Hui quickly lowered his head and shouted, "Liu Shan, what did you say? Go. Stay alive. You idiot." Hearing the weak voice of the big man, Wang Hui's pupils slightly dilated. Looking at Liu Shan again, the big man's chest was no longer rising and falling. Wang Hui screamed, knelt on the ground, pressed his chest with both hands, and performed CPR on Liu Shan. "Liu Shan, breathe quickly. Didn't you say that you would buy your son a bicycle for the new year? Do you also need to teach him how to ride a bicycle? Don't sleep, get up. Give me a breath." At this time, he heard a voice from above his head. "What are you doing? Get out of here quickly, it's dangerous here." Wang Hui raised his head and saw a mecha shaped like a white dog coming to the side, and the mecha master inside was speaking using an external speaker. In the cab, Bay looked out the panoramic window. The window used the picture magnification function, allowing her to clearly see the 2 soldiers on the ground. Then she heard the soldier who was doing resuscitation shout, "Please help us. Old Shan is in shock. Can you call a medical team for me? His son is only 7 years old. The child can't be without a father." Bay's eyes suddenly turned red, his lips trembled, and then he shouted, "Get out of here quickly. He's dead. He's dead." Wang Hui's whole body was shocked, and only then did he see that the big man old Shan's body below the waist was gone. No. Looking at the soldier holding his head and yelling, Bay's eyes flashed with anger, and he looked at the giant beast that had been attacked by the Bion, and had retracted its head and limbs into its tortoise shell. In the cockpit of the Bion mecha, on the command console, a sound came from the giant beast's radar. Matching completed. Confirmed that the target beast is Mirage Turtle. Level, upper level 2. Type, intermedium. Features, thick armor, hot knife, hallucination, gas explosion. Luo Yan narrowed his eyes slightly, and immediately circles of fire appeared in his eyes, and he activated Wu Wang burning eyes. At this time, seeing that the Mirage Turtle was shrinking in its thick shell, and couldn't come out, he was going to use the secret technique Blood Shura and use Blood Evil to weaken the defense of the beast. Suddenly, 2 dark blue arms stretched out from the void, with complex and evil patterns on the arms, and claws like sharp blades, formed by the condensation of dark blue flames, hung on the fingers. Weird blue goblin. As soon as the 2 arms stretched out from the void, they grabbed the Mirage Turtle and smashed it to the ground with force. The earth suddenly broke into pieces, and the ground was undulating, forming a circle of stone waves. Then an arm reached into the thick shell and pulled outward with sudden force, actually grabbing the bunch of tentacles on the Mirage Turtle's head and pulling its big head out of the thick shell. Chapter 382, Flying. In the cockpit of the mecha, Luo Yan looked back and saw that the magic machine 8 gates was nearby, and his face had changed into a green-faced and fanged devil mask. Luo Yan frowned slightly, always feeling that Bei's emotions were a little fluctuating, and asked, Xiao Bei, are you okay? No. Bei's voice rang in the communication channel. At this time, some bulges on the back of the Mirage Turtle suddenly made a muffled sound and spewed out thick smoke. The thick smoke spread rapidly and enveloped the figure of the Mirage Turtle in an instant. Then the smoke suddenly expanded, flashed with fire, and suddenly exploded violently. Mirage Turtle, gas explosion. Boom. A ball of flames rose and formed a fireball. The violent impact shook the two black and blue magic arms apart. The Mirage Turtle immediately returned to nature, and the tentacles on its head flew around. The giant beast roared, and its feet scratched the ground, and it rushed towards the 8 gates quickly. Its intuition told it that the strange arm just now was made by the mecha that looked like a white dog. While running, the surface of the 4 spider-like legs of the Mirage Turtle quickly lit up and glowed red. When it was still a few hundred meters away from the 8 gates, the Mirage Turtle suddenly jumped up like a spider, and then waved its limbs, dancing out a bright red light. The light emitted high heat, exuding a sharp meaning, and attacked the target. Hot knife. Just as it was about to hit the target, suddenly, a light and shadow swept. The mecha Bion had already inserted between the Mirage Turtle and the 8 gates, and the sound of the blue sea tide sounded in the void, and then the phantom of the heavy mountains and angry sea appeared. At the same time, the big shield station was raised by Luo Yan and blocked in front of him. The Mirage Turtle used the bright red knife light danced by the hot knife to break into the phantom of the blue sea, and was constantly weakened. When it hit the shield of Taishan, the shield that had been completely repaired had ripples on the surface. The red blade lights became distorted and blurred. The blade lights, which had been weakened, were now absorbed by a large part. At this time, the supercore matrix on the fuselage of the Bion was flashing. Luo Yan used the energy absorption characteristic of the Teoti to absorb part of the impact kinetic energy of the hot knife and stored it. Even so, the long legs of the Mirage Turtle, which were like sharp blades, still made a series of clanging sounds on the Taishan shield. But when it saw that it could not break Luo Yan's defense, it made a decisive decision and took advantage of its main attack. It pushed hard with its legs that were chopping on the shield, and its body suddenly bounced back and pulled away. When it fell to the ground, the Mirage Turtle rolled its eyes, and the bulge on the thick shell, which was like a pocket-sized mountain, spewed out hot smoke that was even thicker than before. Suddenly, thick smoke filled the air and spread around. In a blink of an eye, there was nothing else to be seen in the surrounding space except the white smoke. Then, another group of black shadows appeared in the thick smoke. The smoke dispersed from time to time, revealing the bodies of the Mirage Turtles. Unknowingly, there were more than a dozen Mirage Turtles in the thick smoke. Seeing this scene, Luo Yan was not panicked at all. This is the illusion ability of the Mirage Turtle. But for him, this ability not only cannot harass and interfere with his judgment. On the contrary, it can be used by Luo Yan. At this time, in the vision of Wu Wang burning eyes, the Mirage Turtles one after another were marked with illusions. Recognize illusions. After seeing through these illusions, a hazy flame rose in Luo Yan's vision, and these flames enveloped the Mirage Turtle phantoms. Those phantoms burned. One after another, the phantoms rose with flames, and crimson flames emerged. In this rising flame, all the phantoms became transparent, illusory, and finally disappeared. Just when all the phantoms disappeared, the body of the Mirage Turtle in the thick fog suddenly burst into flames from its shell. After recognizing delusion, there is burning delusion. The crimson flames burst out, and the Mirage Turtle never thought that one day the attack would come from its own thick shell. The fierce and hot flames made it burn its flesh and bones. Even the Overlord beast was injured by the burning delusion and only bones were left, let alone a high-level beast like it. The Mirage Turtle was also decisive. It immediately jumped out of the turtle shell like a cicada escaping from its shell. The body, still burning with flames, flew away quickly, as if it was skimming on the ice. After abandoning its thick shell, it was so fast that it was almost a giant beast with the galloping feature. But it was not easy to get rid of Luo Yan. At this moment, in Luo Yan's field of vision, there were already more than a dozen red spots on the grey light of the mirage turtle. That was the mark left by the burning delusion. Under Luo Yan's gaze, the red spots seemed to come alive. They began to wriggle wildly, then split into thousands of threads, quickly converging on the back along the blood vessels and nerves in the body of the mirage turtle. It seemed that the organ that created the illusion was on its back, and Luo Yan did not see clearly what organ the giant beast used to create the illusion. Immediately, his pupils shrank suddenly, and the hot smoke that was originally released by the mirage turtle and filled the space. Suddenly, with a bang, it evaporated completely, as if it was stimulated by an invisible flame, making the surrounding scene clear again. At the same time, Bei, who was in the cab, immediately saw the mirage ghost's back suddenly bulge, and then a crimson flame erupted from its body like a volcanic eruption, rushing into the air. The giant beast let out a heart-wrenching scream, and the mirage turtle rushed around frantically. Under the attack of the breaking delusion, the indescribable pain had made it lose its rationality. Seeing several power conversion devices knocked down by the mirage turtle, Bei immediately released another kind of weirdness. Bones suddenly appeared on the body and limbs of the giant beast. The large and small bone hands tightly grasped the mirage turtle's body, making the giant beast temporarily unable to move. At this time, Luo Yan's voice came from the communication channel. "Zio Bei, throw it to the sky." So the next moment, the bone hands under the belly of the mirage turtle multiplied rapidly and combined into a pillar, which suddenly lifted the mirage turtle, which had lost its thick shell and lost a lot of weight, into the air. Luo Yan looked up, and then his yuanli burst out, and the mecha raised his long sword. Although it lost its rationality, the intuition of being a superior giant beast still made the mirage turtle feel the danger in an instant. It let out a roar that resounded through the sky, and its limbs were instantly dyed red. Then it used the hot knife to desperately cut open the bone hands that bound it. Then several legs touched the bone pillar below and bounced up with the force, trying to move away from the original position. Although the bones on the pillar were broken apart by the touch, countless bone hands still grew desperately, entwining the body of the mirage turtle like grapevines. At this moment, the figure of Bayan and the action of the mecha sword slashing down were reflected in one of the mirage turtle's eyes. Chapter 383, Suffocating Distance. In the eyes of the mirage turtle, when the sword of Bayan was slashed down, a thin but extremely gorgeous light band appeared in its field of vision. In an instant, the light band occupied its field of vision and divided its field of vision into two. On the ground, in the cab of the 8-door, Bei looked out from the panoramic window and saw a light curtain like an aurora rising into the sky, and in an instant it passed through the body of the mirage turtle. A unique skill, a long rainbow. The body of the mirage turtle suddenly sprayed a blood mist along the center line, and then the huge body was split in the middle, and then lifted up by the belated shockwave, and then shattered in the strong wind. Large and small pieces of meat, broken bones, organs, and blood fell from the sky like raindrops. They fell on the ground, on the power conversion device, and on various things. Crackling, this rain fell for a long time before it stopped. The earth was dyed with large areas of green and yellow. This shocking scene made Yan Wenbo and others who arrived later couldn't close their mouths. The mecha masters of the 3rd squad and the 4th team were fine. Both Yan Wenbo and Ugu Changson had fought with Luo Yan before. They were quite clear about Luo Yan's strength. But other mecha masters had only heard about it, but never witnessed it. Today, they saw Luo Yan and Bei join forces to kill a top-level monster. Everyone was so surprised that they couldn't close their mouths. In the cockpit of the Mecha Black Thunder, Hiheo was silent, and Su Jiuying's voice sounded in the communication channel. Is classmate Luo so strong now? Remember when we went to Qingyang City for exchange and study? We worked together to deal with the top-level behemoth Taesu. We were in danger at the time, but we finally killed the behemoth. How long has it been since then? And he and classmate Bei have teamed up to kill a top-level beast. Has the distance between us widened so far? While driving the Mecha Orange Cat, Liu Ruohan, wearing a close-fitting driving suit, looked at the godlike Bayan in the distance, and the girl bit her lip gently in the helmet. After returning, I must find a way to get him to train with me. With his current strength, he naturally doesn't look down on the reward of 100,000 per class. Then double it. As long as I can learn something from him, no matter how much money it is worth. There was a lot of discussion in the communication channel, especially Su Jiuying's words touched Yan Wenbo. The temporary commander said, "Student Luo Yan is indeed very powerful, but there is no need to underestimate yourself. Even behemoths of the same level have strong and weak ones. And, student Su Jiuying, compared to when you went to King Jiuying for exchange and study, the machine that student Luo Yan is driving now is much stronger than the white dragon at that time, right?" Su Jiuying suddenly realized and nodded. The white dragon at that time was just an advanced machine, but now Luo Yan is driving a Shenwei regular level machine. The level and performance of the machine alone are much stronger than the previous white dragon. After being awakened by Yan Wenbo's words, Su Jiuying's sense of gap and powerlessness just now dissipated a lot. The girl's expression also relaxed. Not only Su Jiuying, but Hihao also let out a long breath. In terms of gap and powerlessness, he is no less than Su Jiuying. He has been chasing Luo Yan all the time, wanting to prove that he is not inferior to Luo Yan, a freshman. But every time he caught up with Luo Yan, he suddenly found that he was left behind by Luo Yan again. This was the case when Luo Yan broke through the 4th level of the intermediate level last time. Now it was even more so when he saw Luo Yan and Bei working together to kill the upper level beast. Especially this time, the sense of gap and powerlessness was too huge, so huge that it almost swallowed up Hihao's body and mind. Fortunately, Yan Wenbo's words made him sober up. It also made him realize that he still had a lot of room for growth. The most obvious point is that, although the Black Thunder has been upgraded, it is only an intermediate body now. The gap between the intermediate level and the regular level of the Divine Guard is too far. Yan Wenbo also secretly breathed a sigh of relief. He had experienced such a thing before, and knew how desperate it was to see a companion who had been with him day and night making rapid progress, and how hard he tried to catch up. So just now, when he heard everyone sighing at Luo Yan's strength, especially the sense of powerlessness in Su Jiuying's words, he was touched, so he quickly intervened and encouraged everyone. Looking at the Bayan in the distance, Yan Wenbo smiled bitterly. Sometimes, the people around you shine too brightly, which is also a great pressure for others. Then he said loudly, "Let's go, let's drive away those damn parasites." The sun set. With the participation of Yan Wenbo and others, the anchor giant fleas of the power conversion unit died or ran away. When the personnel of the Changping Corps came to take over, the Guanglin Corps successfully completed its mission. The mecha returned to the carrier and entered the underground city, Changping City. This underground city is built on both sides of an underground river that runs through the city. On the underground river, Changping City has built 7 large and small bridges, which have become the most iconic buildings in the city. Since the underground city has activated the first level of alert, the city is far less prosperous and lively than before. In order to use the city's electricity in key places, except for some important buildings in the city, all other buildings are dark. So, while people were in the transport vehicle, Luo Yan looked out the window and saw only a dim, bleak, and dead city. Now the residents should have been taken to the shelter. "It's so quiet, it's really uncomfortable to watch," Bei whispered in the seat next to him. The girl shrank in the seat, curled up into a small ball, like a frightened rabbit. Luo Yan reached out and touched her head, saying nothing, but Bei naturally relaxed. It seemed that, when she was with Luo Yan, she didn't have to be afraid of anything, or worry about anything. At this time, Yan Wenbo's voice sounded in the communicator. "I just contacted the Changping Corps. They feel very sorry. We came here from far away, but not only did they not have time to welcome us, but they also kept us busy for a while. Well, the situation in Changping is still quite dangerous. While we were protecting the light energy matrix, the Changping Corps had 2 squads of mechs fighting on the front line. The situation didn't seem to be very good, so they couldn't send troops to protect the matrix. Fortunately, in addition to us, Corps from Jiuying and other cities have also arrived one after another, and we will have more manpower in the future. Now the Changping Corps has planned a place for us to stay. In this extraordinary period, the environment may not be very good. Everyone please be patient. Immediately, a pilot responded, "It doesn't matter, Captain Yan. We are not here for vacation. We are here to fight. Besides, we are soldiers. As long as we have a place to sleep, it's fine. Why are we so particular?" Everyone agreed. At this time, the convoy had already entered the underground city. Right next to the vehicles, on the same road, ambulances kept passing by, sending the seriously injured from the front line to the city hospital. Luo Yan counted them, and found that in just 1 minute, more than 20 ambulances passed by. This number made him feel depressed. Chapter 384. He is worse than a dog. Changping First Hospital. Sirens continued to sound from outside the hospital gate, and white ambulances drove into the hospital and stopped in front of the main building gate. As soon as each ambulance stopped, doctors and nurses came forward and quickly arranged for the injured in the car to go to different floors. Some were sent directly to the operating room. The operating room is on the top floor of the building. Even if you come here, there will be doctors who assign different operating rooms according to the different conditions of the injured. In these operating rooms, there is a special rescue room with the most complete equipment and presided over by the best surgeon in the hospital. This rescue room is not used easily at ordinary times, but today, this rescue room has performed 7 operations, and one seriously injured and dying patient after another has been temporarily rescued from the hands of death. At this time, another seriously injured patient was pushed to the rescue room while receiving a blood transfusion. But before they reached the emergency room, there was a cry of surprise from behind, followed by someone shouting, "Get out of the way, get out of the way. My wife is about to give birth, all of you stand aside." Several men in black suits rushed up and pushed the seriously injured patient who was receiving a blood transfusion aside without explanation. The field doctor in charge of this patient was furious. "What are you doing? Are you crazy? Who allowed you to come up?" Suddenly, a pistol was pointed at the doctor's head, and the man with the gun said viciously, "Shut up, it's none of your business." The field doctor was so angry that his body was shaking, and then he saw a bed being pushed to the special emergency room. In front, a man in a white suit, an open-collared orange shirt, and a flowered bow tie grabbed a nurse in front of the door. "Perform surgery on my wife immediately, she's about to give birth." The nurse was so frightened that her face turned pale, but she still said, "Sir, the emergency room is now only open to the Corps. If you want to give birth, please go to the obstetrics and gynecology department on the 4th floor." "Are you crazy?" The man in luxurious clothes pointed at his nose. "Take a good look at who I am. I, Shangguan, the president of Shangguan Group. My wife is about to give birth now, and you want me to go to the obstetrics and gynecology department? Do you think I, Shangguan, am just a nobody? Stop talking nonsense. I've already inquired about it. This is the best operating room in your hospital. I reserved it more than half a year ago. Call your best surgeon here right now. If anything happens to my wife and the baby in her belly, I will never forgive your hospital." The field doctor pushed away the man in a suit, who was pointing a gun at him, and said angrily, "You are the crazy one. What's wrong with the Shangguan Group? Do you know what's going on outside now? The soldiers of the Corps are risking their lives to snipe the Behemoth, and you actually want to occupy the best operating room and surgeon. I'm asking you, why?" Shangguan pushed the nurse away, snatched the pistol from the bodyguard next to him, walked over and pointed it at the field doctor's head. "Just because of my name, Shangguan. So what if they are soldiers of the Corps? How much tax does our group pay every year, and how much money does it sponsor to the Corps? To be frank, the soldiers of your Corps are all supported by my money. Besides, they are not major divisions, but just some lowly low-level soldiers. How can they be compared with my wife and children?" Just then, a red dot appeared on Shangguan's head. Shangguan was stunned for a moment, knowing that it was infrared, and quickly stepped back and looked around. Who pointed a gun at me?" At this time, the crowd parted, and several people came up. A man walking in front smiled and said, "I was wondering why it suddenly became lively here. It turns out that there is a mad dog barking here. A graceful woman next to him said, "No matter what, the people of Shangwen group can't be called dogs, right? Zhao wrong, you are right. People like this call him a dog, which is an insult to dogs." The man reached out and grabbed Shangwen's tie and said, "Because he is not even as good as a dog." Shangwen was breathing rapidly, but he didn't dare to talk nonsense anymore. After all, the people in front of him were all wearing mecha driving suits. They are all mecha masters. The mecha master who grabbed Shangwen was Ma Shuo. He took off the gun from Shangwen's hand, patted his cheek and said, "Do some good deeds for your children, Mr. Shangwen. If it weren't for these so-called lowly soldiers in your mouth, no matter how much money you have, it would be useless. You would have become the excrement of the giant beast long ago. Get out. Don't let me see you again." With a strong push, Shangwen fell a few steps. His expression changed, and finally he snorted and said loudly, "What are you still standing there for? Send your wife to the obstetrics and gynecology department. A bunch of trash." After Shangwen and others left, Ma Shuo made a gesture, and the operation here returned to normal. At this time, Meng Fangxi, who was holding a sniper rifle, came over, and the young man said gloomily, "Captain, you should have ordered me to shoot just now. That kind of trash doesn't deserve to live in this world." Ma Shuo sighed and said, "Actually, I envy you very much. Your world is very simple. It's a pity that this world is complicated. People like Shangwen are indeed trash, but for the time being, the dungeon still needs people like him. So I can't let you shoot, although I also want to break his neck." Ma Shuo looked out the window and then said, "Let's go. The attack inspection is done. It's time for us to go to the front line." Meng Fangxi just nodded, and then heard the dungeon alarm sounded. 3 long and 2 short. "This is an invasion alarm!" Exclamation mark. Ma Shuo and others changed their colors, and Zhao rushed out of the window and looked out. Strange, the underground city armor has not been damaged. No wonder it was a false alarm. At this time, Ma Shuo heard the voice of the headquarters in his headset. After listening, he said anxiously, "It's the anchor-headed giant fleas. Those things sneaked in from the dark river. Hurry back to the core." At the same time, in the eastern section of the underground river in the underground city, the river was surging, and anchor-headed giant fleas emerged from the water, floating up to the sky, and dispersed to the city on both sides of the dark river. The male fleas roared, arched their heads like anchors, and slammed into the buildings, smashing them to pieces. The female fleas swam upwards, and then fired high-energy beams from their dorsal horns. The beams swept the ground, destroying and cutting the roads and many facilities. The first to respond were the off-road vehicles equipped with anti-aircraft machine guns. They roared in, and the firepower on the vehicles pulled up the heavy machine guns and pointed them at the giant insects above the city, and then the machine guns roared and fired. In the dim city, dull gunshots rang out, and bright lines of fire cut through the space, whipping the parasites floating in the air like long whips. Although the anchor-head giant fleas are huge, they are not real monsters. Their shells can resist rifle bullets, but when they are bombarded by anti-aircraft machine guns, their shells are broken and bleeding. However, such wounds are just like a human accidentally cutting a finger for giant fleas with an average body length of 40 meters. They will not kill them, but it is enough to anger them, so the giant fleas change their targets one by one, no longer venting their energy on buildings and dead objects, but attacking ground vehicles. Chapter 385, Making Money. An anchor-headed giant flea swooped down from mid-air. It was a male flea, and its huge head, like an anchor, was much harder than other parts. It crashed down under the bullets of the anti-aircraft machine gun. It violently crashed into an off-road vehicle. "Get out of the way. Quick." The driver of the off-road vehicle had just time to turn the steering wheel, and the anchor-headed giant flea crashed into the side of the vehicle. The thin body of the vehicle suddenly deformed and bounced up, and the driver and soldiers inside were thrown out of the vehicle. Then, their bodies deformed in the violent impact, and died tragically on the spot. The giant flea raised its head, and was about to hit another off-road vehicle not far away, but at this moment, a shell whizzed over, and hit the giant insect's head, exploding a raging flame. The anchor-headed giant flea screamed, and its head shell burst into pieces, spurting out yellow and green liquid from it. On the road, tanks drove over, distanced themselves from the giant fleas, and lined up in a row. to form an artillery position. After several tanks were lined up, the gun barrels rose up, and the muzzles spewed out hot flames one after another. When the flames gushed to the side and rear, the shells broke through the air and bombarded the giant fleas. The anchor-head giant flea was blown to pieces on the spot. Compared with the giant beast, this giant insect is still easier to destroy. As long as the tanks with slightly stronger power are available, they can be killed. However, the combat effectiveness of the giant flea should not be underestimated. Just like at this moment, 2 female fleas floated in the air and came above the street, with light shining on their back corners. Then dazzling beams of light were ejected, steadily repelling the surrounding air, and fell to the ground in an instant, and then suddenly moved forward, passing the tanks and war vehicles on the street. The armor of the war vehicle was like paper under these energy beams, and was easily torn apart. Then the outer shell of the war vehicle began to deform. When the scorching beams rushed into the engine and passed through the fuel tank. Boom. There was a violent explosion inside the chariot. The blazing fireball, with its terrible high temperature, lifted the chariot into the air in the earth-shaking explosion. In the deformed and cut chariot, hundreds of parts were burning and splashing out, blasting the dead or alive soldiers into sieves, killing them instantly, before they could taste the pain. Similar incidents were constantly found on the streets on both sides of the Dark River. If you look down from the air of the underground city, you can see groups of flames blooming in the city along the coast. At the same time, the water in the Dark River did not return to calm because of the departure of the parasite swarm, but became more and more boiling for some unknown reason. Then the river water suddenly disappeared at a speed visible to the naked eye. The water upstream seemed to be blocked by something and no longer flowed in, so the riverbed of the Dark River gradually appeared. Just when the river was about to dry up and the riverbed was full of fat fish jumping everywhere, suddenly, the Dark River section located upstream suddenly exploded. Thousands of tons of river sand and mud and rocks rushed into the air like a gusher. Amidst the mud and rocks, a dark shadow emerged. It turned out to be a giant fish over 100 meters long. The fish looked like an eel, with a vermilion back and slippery mucus all over its body. It rushed out of the underground river and landed on the ground, then swam and went deep into the streets. Wherever the giant fish passed, it left a large pool of mucus, which soon corroded the roadbed, causing the ground to emit green smoke and gradually sink inward. In the back, after the mud and sand of the underground river fell, a huge channel appeared in the riverbed. Then the river rushed in, flooded the channel, and filled the riverbed again. Changping City, Guangling Core Temporary Camp. Luo Yan ran out of the dormitory when he heard the alarm. He saw the red warning lights above the underground city flashing wildly, and countless red stars seemed to light up in the dim city. Then Yan Wenbo's voice sounded in the headset. The Changping Core Command has come with combat instructions. The underground river in the dungeon has been invaded by the anchor flea swarm, and because these giant fleas opened a passage, a lower level giant beast has already invaded the dungeon from the underground river. Maybe more giant beasts will enter from the underground river. Now the Changping Corps has asked us to assist them. They have to carry out emergency operations and try to block the passage opened by the flea swarm before more giant beasts enter the dungeon. Now I order you as a commander, the 2nd squad, the 5th team, the 3rd squad, the 4th team, attack. Immediately, the mecha divisions of the 2 squads of the Guangling Corps rushed out of the dormitory, jumped onto the base vehicles, and drove to the mecha parking point. A moment later, Luo Yan had entered the cockpit of the mecha. After a busy period, the mecha started. The eyes of Bayan lit up with dazzling light, the energy nodes on the body emitted a hazy glow, and the aircraft cannon behind him rose up and was set up ahead of time. Then he took off his shield, drew his long sword, and strode forward. In a blink of an eye, the 2 mecha squads of Guangling Corps left the temporary camp in an orderly formation and rushed to the underground river in the city. On the screen of the command console, the combat instructions of Changping Corps were issued. Luo Yan checked the instructions. Since the gap in the riverbed, opened by the flea swarm, is located between bridge number 4 and bridge number 5, the first link of this operation is to lower the bridge gate between bridge number 4 and bridge number 5 to cut off the river water. The second link is to drain the river water in the target river section, to expose the gap in the riverbed. The last link is naturally to block the gap. Each of these 3 links does not need Guanglin Core to do it, but is responsible for the Construction Bureau and Engineering Department of Changping. Now the repair team has rushed to the target bridge section. The task of Guanglin Core is to protect the repair team when repairing the gap in the riverbed to ensure that they will not be disturbed by the anchorhead giant flea or other giant beasts. In addition, the Changping underground city has determined the kill reward. Killing the anchorhead giant flea will reward 100,000 work points. Killing a lower level behemoth will reward 2 million work points or the corresponding behemoth core. Killing a mid-level behemoth will reward 5 million work points or the corresponding behemoth core. Killing a high-level behemoth will reward 20 million work points or the corresponding behemoth core, or other behemoth materials of equal value. In order to protect the city and mobilize the enthusiasm of the reinforcement, the dungeon also spent a lot of money. Seeing these kill rewards, there was a burst of exclamations in the communication channel. Kang Shun even exclaimed, "Xiao Luo, you and Xiao Bei have made a lot of money this time." Although the kill reward needs to be shared with the collaborators according to their respective contributions. But not long ago, Luo Yan and Bei teamed up to kill a high-level behemoth in the light energy matrix. A high-level reward of 20 million work points, even if it is shared by 2 people. Even Bei, who provides assistance, can get several million. Not to mention Luo Yan, he is the main force, and he must get at least tens of thousands. Therefore, after hearing Kang Shun's words, Luo Yan's eyes lit up. Although he has tens of millions in his account now, he will have to spend a lot of money to upgrade the Bian. Now Changping City has given clear rewards to behemoths of all levels, which has greatly stimulated Luo Yan. Luo Yan now has only one thought: make money. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 386 Emergency Repair. At the beginning of the construction of each underground city, the situation that mechs would be needed to fight back if invaded by giant beasts was considered. Therefore, when building the underground city, special passages were planned for mechs to pass through. The road surface of these special passages and the buildings on both sides have been specially reinforced and designed to be earthquake-proof. Even if the mechs run at full speed, they will not cause any damage. Now, the mechs of Luo Yan and others are running fast in such special passages and reaching the underground river. At the target section of the underground river, emergency repairs have begun. The left and right bridges have lowered the portcullis to intercept the river water. At the target section of the river, thick water pipes have been put into the river. Dozens of trucks carrying high power pumps on the riverbank almost fill the riverbank. All pumps are running at full power, constantly pumping water out of the riverbed, allowing the water level inside to drop at a speed visible to the naked eye. On the shore, dozens of trucks have brought armor plates to block the gap. These armor plates were lifted by cranes and placed on the ground, and then assembled and docked on site by the engineering team. In the cab, Luo Yan was shocked to see such a large-scale emergency operation for the first time. Hundreds or even thousands of repair personnel were dispatched from the underground city. Hundreds of vehicles of various types covered the entire riverside area. So many people were working for the same thing and the same goal. This scene alone was enough to move people. Compared with the giant beasts, humans are undoubtedly small. But such small creatures, under unity and cooperation, can fight against those huge life forms. Perhaps it is this spirit and will that allows humans to stand out among countless species in the continuous evolution, and then build their own civilization on this blue planet. Giant fleas were found at 6 o'clock. Number 7. Kang Shun's voice suddenly sounded in the communication channel. Luo Yan immediately looked in the 6 o'clock direction, and sure enough, there were 7 anchorhead giant fleas floating in the air. Among them, there were 3 male fleas and 4 female fleas. The female fleas were far away, but they had already arched their backs, their upper dorsal horns glowed, and they fired beams of light at the repair team on the ground. Luo Yan was close, so he immediately controlled the mecha to attack. The jet behind the barn burst into blue flames, and the huge propulsion allowed the mecha to rush to the front of the repair team before the beam arrived. Many workers in the repair team on the ground saw the beams of light from the female fleas, and they screamed and dropped their tools and ran away. Unexpectedly, a strong wind suddenly rose, and then a huge figure protected them under the figure. The figure was silver white with tiger stripes, raised a large shield, and blocked the beam. The supervisor in charge of this team pressed the helmet and shouted, "Don't panic, the mecha will protect us. Everyone hurry up, finish the work early, and go back early." The workers returned to their original positions, and from time to time they looked at the mecha in front. In the cab, Luo Yan easily blocked these beams, and then the aircraft cannon on his shoulder roared. A huge and penetrating cannon shot out, and bullets rubbed the air, turning red, leaving bright light marks in the air, sweeping the female fleas. The female fleas immediately changed their targets, and the beams on their backs swept back and forth, cutting and intercepting the bullets. At the same time, their bodies kept moving to avoid the attacks of the Bayan. The other 3 male fleas took the opportunity to rush over, arching their heads, trying to knock down the mecha. But suddenly, 2 black and blue arms stretched out in the air, and the ghost hands covered with complex patterns opened left and right, respectively holding down the heads of a male flea and pressing them to the ground. Bang! Even though the male flea's head shell was incredibly hard, it was crushed to pieces, and finally died with its liver and brain splattered on the ground. Another male flea was stabbed into the mouthpits by a silver spear, and the silver spear threw a gunflower, and the male flea was torn into pieces. At this time, Bayan also killed 4 female fleas. Luo Yan looked back and saw that the magic machine Baman and Ugu Chanks and Sphedian were near him. With the cooperation of the 3 mechas, it took less than a minute to kill 7 giant fleas, which boosted the morale of the repair team, and the workers worked even harder. At this time, the water level of the underground river had dropped to the bottom, and the uneven riverbed was exposed. At the same time, the huge gap was also exposed. There was still river water coming out of this gap, and at this moment, the river water in the gap suddenly boiled. At the same time, Luo Yan and others' giant beast radars were flashing spectral signals. The computer quickly compared the signals and obtained the results. Confirmed that the target giant beast is iron bonefish. Level, intermediate level 3. Type, scale insect. Features, deep diving, iron bone, violent thorns, steel teeth. Boom. The river water in the gap suddenly exploded into a water curtain, and a black shadow crashed out of the water curtain. It was a giant fish, a bit like a carp, but its body was pitch black, and its bones grew outside. Those bones wrapped around its body, one after another, and looked very hard, with a golden luster. But as the giant fish moved, those bones rose and fell, and looked like cartilage, which was very strange. The giant fish fell to the ground, and its wide fins on both sides were like wings and feet, paddling on the ground, allowing the iron bone fish to quickly rush to the repair team on the riverbank. At this moment, another team came to meet it. Hiheo was in that team. His mecha Black Thunder took the lead and blocked the iron bone fish. 2 powerful arms reached forward and grabbed one of the iron bones of the giant fish. The mecha's legs were propped up, and the joints of the whole body sprayed out a stream of burning white air. The Black Thunder was knocked back 100 meters by the giant fish and stopped. As soon as the iron bone fish stopped, other mechas took the opportunity to attack. Soon, this mid-level giant beast was in danger. Finally, the giant fish was hit hard by Black Thunder, and its head exploded, and it died on the riverbank. After that, except for the anchor giant flea that had invaded the ground before, and a few giant insects that occasionally drilled out of the gap in the riverbed, no more giant beasts appeared. 4 hours later, the assembled armor plate successfully blocked the gap. In addition, after the Changping Corps discovered the entrance to the passage outside the city and destroyed it, this hidden danger was finally eliminated. After completing the task, Luo Yan returned to the camp. He calculated. The previous task only killed 5 giant fleas and earned 500,000 work points. He couldn't help but sigh. Money is really not easy to make. At this time, he felt something in his heart, turned around, and saw Hiheo, a tall and strong man with a tough look, standing behind him with a helmet. Hiheo suddenly raised his hand, stretched out his finger, and pointed at Luo Yan. I will catch up with you soon. Then he strode past Luo Yan. Luo Yan shook his head and returned to his dormitory. The next morning, just after Luo Yan had breakfast, Yan Wenbo's voice rang out over the communicator. Everyone, come to the operations room. The Changping Corps is going to hold an online operations meeting. Come and listen. This way, you will have a clearer idea of the part you are responsible for. Chapter 387, Operational Objectives. Since there are too many people participating in the battle in Changping City, it is impossible to hold a battle meeting at the Corps headquarters. Only an online mode can be used. When Luo Yan came to the camp's operations room, the mecha divisions participating in this operation arrived one after another. Student Luo, here. The third-year student Su Jiuying waved her hand enthusiastically. This senior sister was dressed very simply and refreshingly today. The collocation of the college style was incompatible with the atmosphere of the operations room. But from under her collar, you can see the driving suit. It seems that the driving suit is put on in advance, so that when you need to fight, you don't need to change clothes. You can just take off your coat and enter the mecha. Luo Yan came to Su Jiuying and was arranged by her to sit next to Hiheo. Hiheo, who took the tough guy route, stood straight, clasped his hands, looked straight, and sat as steady as a rock. After Luo Yan sat down, Hiheo whispered, "To Xiangang Dragon Riders came this morning. They should be the main force of this battle. Although I'm a little unwilling, in fact, we are still far away from the Dragon Riders. So after the battle begins, we just follow orders and don't do unnecessary things. Especially someone, don't think that you can really face the Overlord Beast just because you have confronted it and made up a knife with it." Su Jiuying next to him closed his eyes and said, "You will die if you speak nicely. You are obviously worried that classmate Luo will underestimate the enemy and advance rashly, but you have to speak in a villain's tone. You will definitely not survive more than 3 episodes on TV." Hiheo made a huss sound and looked at the ceiling, as if something on it attracted his attention. In a blink of an eye, Bei and Liu Ruohan also arrived, and the 5 reserve soldiers of Basin Academy sat together. When Yan Wenbo arrived, the lights in the war room dimmed, and then a screen lit up. A gentle middle-aged man appeared on the screen. He smiled at the camera and said, "Good morning, fellow mecha divisions. I'm Jiang Wuang, the Chief of Staff of the Changping Corps. First of all, on behalf of the Changping Mecha Corps and the 560,000 residents of the city, please allow me to express my gratitude to everyone for coming." After a pause, Jiang Wuang said, "Then, let's get to the point. Everyone should know that the dominant beast passing through our Changping city is Kun. After many days of investigation, we have obtained some basic information. Let me share it with you here. Kun, the dominant beast, the scale insect. It is about 224 kilometers long, and the widest part of the body is about 160 kilometers. Although it is not as exaggerated as the legend says, among the giant beasts, this size is as supersized as the dragon. Although he was mentally prepared, Luo Yan's breathing was still a little heavy when he heard this number. How can a giant beast with a body length of more than 200 kilometers float in the sky? Jiang Wuoyang's next word solved Luo Yan's doubts. We now know that Kun has tens of thousands of anti-gravity organs on its body. It is precisely because of these organs that it can float in the sky. When this giant beast is in the sky, it will not have too serious an impact on the ground. But when it approaches the earth, the anti-gravity field released by Kun to maintain floating will affect things on the ground. Once Kun approaches the underground city, it does not even need to enter the underground city, and our Changping city will experience weightlessness. By then, I'm afraid that many unexpected disasters will be caused. What's more, there are tens of thousands of anchor-headed giant fleas and a large number of giant beasts on Kun's body. It hasn't arrived yet, but the parasites and giant beasts have already caused us trouble. Therefore, the goal of this operation, to kill the overlord giant beast, Kun. If it can't be killed, at least we have to change its forward trajectory. There was a silence in the operations room. Killing the overlord giant beast is not unfamiliar to the mecha divisions of the Guanglin Corps. Not long ago, the Guanglin Corps killed a dominant beast in the Misty Canyon. But among the known dominant beasts, Huan cannot be considered particularly powerful, and it is not even in the top 20. But Kun is different. Because humans have too little information about this dominant beast, its combat power has always been questionable. But no matter what, this supersized beast, its body itself is a forbidden beast, and it is definitely not something that a dominant beast like Huan can touch. In any case, Kun is definitely stronger than Huan. Although there are Jiuying dragon riders and reinforcement from many cities, it is still beyond everyone's imagination to kill Kun. Or rather, it is unimaginable. Changping City should also be aware of this, so it did not say everything. So there is a second best combat goal of changing the forward trajectory. Jiang Wuang continued on the screen at this time. This operation is also divided into several parts. They are asterisk. It was already known when Luo Yan walked out of the operations room. He felt the call of food, but today he didn't have to eat the convenient but tasteless battlefield food. In order to allow everyone to exert all their abilities in the upcoming battle, the Changping Corps specially arranged a rich lunch. Due to limited manpower, the food and chefs were sent from the Corps, so several mecha divisions of the Changping Corps temporarily acted as drivers. When Luo Yan walked to the restaurant, he saw a familiar face. Changping Corps Mecha Division, Meng Fangxi. In addition to him, there were Ma Shuo and Xiao Rang. The latter also saw him, and Ma Shuo immediately came up and waved his hand enthusiastically. Hey, isn't this the brother from the Guangling Corps? You are here to support too? Although Ma Shuo almost hit someone while driving drunk in the Misty Canyon before, he apologized sincerely afterwards and behaved well, so Luo Yan had no bad feelings towards this man. He nodded upon hearing that, and walked into the restaurant indifferently. Ma Shuo laughed dryly, and then when he saw Yan Wenbo, he went up to him to make friends. Meng Fangxi came over, and when Luo Yan passed by, he suddenly said, "Yesterday I killed a giant beast, a slippery fish. I killed it alone." After he finished speaking, he turned around, but was stunned. Luo Yan had disappeared. At this time, he heard someone snort. "Idiot." Meng Fangxi turned around abruptly and saw a boy who was a little younger than him, but with sharp edges and a burly figure. "I killed an upper level beast yesterday." Slippery fish? What's so good about a lower level beast? After saying that, he walked in. A girl dressed like a student followed behind him. She stood on tiptoe and knocked the boy on the head. "How dare you say that about others? You broke through yourself and went to show off to classmate Luo." The boy covered his head and said angrily, "How are they the same? Why are they different?" The two people who seemed to have a good relationship walked into the restaurant while arguing, but Meng Fangxi was like petrified. Upper level? That Luo guy actually killed an upper level? Chapter 388 Ignition. Afternoon. On the surface, Luo Yan, who was in the cab, saw the mechs of the Changping Corps come out of the attack cabin. Then these mechs walked to the facilities similar to rocket launch platforms one by one. These facilities were just built, and several of the launch platform fixing frames were still undergoing final debugging. On the fixing frame of each launch platform, there is a peculiar device, which is like a shuttle as a whole, with a jet at the tail. When the mecha walks over, the mechanical arm on the fixing frame will install the device on the mecha under the control of the computer. For the convenience of installation, there is a joint device on the back of each mecha that can be automatically disassembled at any time. There is such equipment on the back of the Bian. But Luo Yan did not go to the launch pad like other mechas, because his Bian is a reserve army. Now, the Changping Corps is going to carry out the first phase of operations. According to what Chief of General Staff Jiang Wuang said this morning, the first phase of the operation is to launch a total of 130 mechas, including Changping City, Bengayao and Yanshi, into the sky in batches. In order to land on the Overlord Behemoth, which is still hundreds of kilometers away, and located at an altitude of 2,000 meters. You must know that most mechas do not have the ability to fly. Even mechas like the Bian equipped with jets cannot fly at an altitude of 2,000 meters. Therefore, to send the mechas to the sky, you need to use those shuttle-like devices. The Air Wing 3 aircraft, only they can send the heavy mechas to such a high place. These aircraft are obviously not something that a Changping underground city can have. Yes, they are important materials for the Behemoth strategic house to support the Changping underground city. They all arrived at the underground city 2 days ago. After discovering the existence of Kun and its advanced route, the Changping Corps had already formulated this combat plan and installed the launch pad in advance as reinforcement, and before that, the Mecha Corps was as badly injured as King Jiuying. The Guanglin Corps did not need to participate in the beach landing operation, but Luo Yan was driving a Shenwei conventional class machine, which had a jet engine. Therefore, after his consent, the Bion was also temporarily installed with a joint device as a backup machine. Zhao Luo, although your Bion has become a backup, we are reinforcement. Even if the Changping Corps needs you to go out, you don't have to go temporarily. Yan Wenbo's voice sounded in the communication channel. Then Kang Shun also said, yes, the first phase of the battle is very dangerous. The mecha must rise to a high altitude and be projected to the location of the target beast. Although the flight process is remotely controlled by the ground computer, the driver does not need to operate it. But when approaching the overlord beast, it will definitely be attacked. Bei said in a soft and worried voice. Staff Officer Jiuying mentioned this morning that there are more than 60 beasts living on Kun, plus a large number of anchor-headed giant fleas. When landing, these things will definitely try their best to protect Kun. Luo Yan hummed and said, I won't be stubborn. After hearing this, no more sounds came from the communicator. Looking out from the panoramic window, Luo Yan saw that most of the mechas had been installed and the Air Wing 3 aircraft had been fixed on the back of the body and could be launched at any time. The first phase is a beach landing. After successfully landing on the overlord beast, it is the second phase. The strategic goal of the second phase is to destroy at least more than half of the anti-gravity organs on the overlord beast. According to the analysis of the Biological Research Group of the Giant Beast Strategic Office, as long as more than half of the anti-gravity organs are destroyed, Kun will not be able to float in the air. Even if the remaining organs are still functioning, its mass is too large to rely on half of the organs to maintain its altitude. Destroying half of the anti-gravity organs and bringing this oversized overlord beast to the ground will achieve the goal of the second stage. At this time, Jiang Wuoyang's voice sounded in the public network of the communication channel. This is the Changping Corps command. I'm the Chief of Staff Jiang Wuoyang. I'm here to inform all participants in the first phase of the landing battle. The first phase of the operation will begin in 10 minutes. Please complete the assembly of the flight device as soon as possible. At present, it can be confirmed that Kun's super anti-membrane has been deployed. The range is amazing, almost equivalent to the size of a provincial city. Within the range of the anti-membrane, it is known that there is a zero gravity field. In this way, even giant beasts that do not have the ability to fly can move around Kun. Of course, whether they are autonomous or passive is not known for the time being. What is certain is that landing in the forbidden area in the sky will be subject to fierce attacks. Therefore, please act according to the plan. In addition, most of Kun's anti-gravity organs are concentrated in its tail, and there are fewer organs in the middle and front sections and even under the body. The computer will give you the correct guidance at that time. As long as half of the anti-gravity organs are destroyed, you can retire with honor. Here, I wish you all a successful start and immediate success. Soon 10 minutes passed. The attack order sounded in the communication channel. Stations 1 to 10, ignite. Stations 11 to 20, ignite. As these sortie orders were issued, the aircraft behind the mechas on the launch platforms ignited and sprayed, pushing the heavy bodies into the sky. In the cockpit, Luo Yan raised his head and looked at this spectacular scene, and his mood could not calm down for a long time. Hundreds of mechas took off one after another, and the jets spewed out dazzling fireworks, carrying people's hopes, dragging out parabolas, and swept into the distance. I don't know if it was because of the approach of the Sky Overlord. The originally clear sky quickly became dim and unclear. Thick clouds gathered, but there was no wind on the ground. It was filled with a solemn feeling before the storm. Because it was beyond the field of vision, the mecha masters left on the ground, including Luo Yan, could no longer see the mechas that took off. Luo Yan clicked on the command console and opened a window, which showed the pictures taken by the drone at high altitude. Now, above the sea of clouds, one after another, the mechas broke through the clouds and headed for the target location. Just in front of them, above the sea of clouds, there was a huge cloud hovering. In the cloud, there were lightning and thunder. Every time the lightning flashed, the outline of a giant fish could be vaguely seen. The fish was shaped like a giant whale, and from time to time, huge golden pupils appeared in the clouds. Occasionally, it flapped its fins, which would stir up a strong wind and stir up the clouds. Through the screen, Luo Yan also saw that on the back of the giant fish, there were 3 dorsal fins that fluttered like flags. Every time they shook, countless purple lightning would burst out of the thick clouds. They were so dense that it looked like a group of dragons dancing wildly. Chapter 389. If you don't come back once you go, then you will never come back. In the cab, Jiang Wuiyang's voice rang out on the communication channel on the command console and the public network. Luo Yan held his breath, fearing that he would miss important information. There are still 100 kilometers to the target location. The first impact will be encountered soon. Machines 1 to 30, get ready, ray shields, and defend. There was a pause in the communication channel, and Jiang Wuiyang said solemnly, drivers of machines 1 to 30, here, please allow me to express my highest respect to you on behalf of all the residents of Changping City. Changping City will never forget your efforts and contributions. Luo Yan's heart sank when he heard it. In the first stage of the battle, since most mechs do not have the ability to fight at high altitudes, therefore, they need to be equipped with the Air Wing 3 aircraft for high altitude delivery. In this process, the mecha group projected into the forbidden area in the air will inevitably be attacked. Since it is impossible to respond as flexibly in the air as on the ground, this delivery needs to move forward under the fire of the giant beast. According to the arrangement of Changping City, the entire assault lineup is led by the mechs of Changping City. The mechs of Pingyao and Yanqi were at the very end. Although there were many dangers, after landing in the forbidden area, at least the position of the mechs of these two cities in the landing battle could be said to be the safest. And the most dangerous position in the entire landing battle was the forward. For the forward, this was almost a battle of life and death. They needed to defend with all their strength, intercept the firepower of the Behemoth, and open a relatively safe landing channel for the friendly aircraft behind. This mission of death fell on the aircrafts 1 to 30. These 30 aircrafts were not driven by the active mecha divisions of Changping City. After formulating the combat plan, the Changping Corps called all retired pilots and recruited 30 volunteers on a voluntary basis. The average age of these 30 volunteers was around 40 years old. They were unable to continue serving for various reasons and even had difficulty controlling the mechs to fight normally. But if they just controlled the mechs to raise shields and attack, they could still do it. But this was a battle that was destined to never return. When recalling the retired pilots, Jiang Wuiyang was ready to get nothing. Unexpectedly, there were still many people willing to join the battle. In the end, Jiang Wuiyang had to exclude those with old and young families before selecting these 30 mecha divisions. Now, hearing Jiang Wuiyang's words, the communication channel was filled with voices that were no longer young but quite cheerful. Staff Officer Jiang, you are too polite. The Corps still remembers me, old Chen, and allows me to fight for the survival of the dungeon with this worthless life. It is worth it even if I die. My wife and children were eaten by the giant beast, and even my legs were fed to the giant beast. I'm not afraid of death, I just want to kill all those beasts. I don't have much time left anyway. The doctor said that I can only live for another year and a half at most. Now I can use my remaining energy to die gloriously on the battlefield instead of dying in a smelly hospital bed. I'm so happy. That's right, brothers. How do you sing that song? Oh, I remember it. Then a drama voice sounded. Great sage, where are you going? Step on the south sky, shatter the sky. What if you never come back? Then, never come back. Changping Corps headquarters. On the bridge, listening to the opera tunes on the communication channel, Jiang Wuiyang's eyes were red, and his hands holding the bridge railing were so pale that you could see the joints. In the headquarters, everyone stopped their work, stood up silently, and saluted solemnly. These words were heard throughout the city, and in every shelter. The 560,000 residents of Changping City, regardless of gender, age, all bowed. In the sky, mechs 1 to 30 raised their shields and set up rifles and machine guns. Then the mecha divisions who were good at mystical arts in the rear gave these mechas defensive mystical arts to bless them. After doing all this, the vanguard mecha group crashed into Kun's super anti-membrane and broke into the dense cloud of lightning and thunder. As soon as they entered the anti-membrane and the cloud layer, in the cockpit of the mecha at the front, a middle-aged pilot with grey beard looked out from the panoramic window and saw thousands of light spots in the distance. Thousands of light spots, like the reflection of stars. The next second, an equal number of bioenergy beams whizzed in. It turned out that those light spots were high-energy rays emitted by female giant fleas from their dorsal horns. Damn, it's so spectacular. Worth it. The middle-aged pilot shouted, running the skills, bursting out a meager amount of energy, adding another layer of defense to the mecha. In a blink of an eye, the vanguard mecha group encountered fierce firepower attacks, and the mecha masters did not even need to aim, and they fully activated their weapons and ammunition. The bullets, shells, and missiles fired from every rifle, every machine gun, and every bomb bay were the roar of human counterattack. At an altitude of 2,000 meters, in the thick clouds, rays and bullets intertwined. The collision of beams and metal, the confrontation between humans and giant beasts, was fully opened at this moment. Even though he was in the cab, even though there was a whistling sound of wind outside the mecha, Meng Fangxi could hear all kinds of roars coming from the front. At this moment, his whole body was shaking violently, and his vision was a little blurred. But he still gritted his teeth, and stared at the front. When his mecha also fell into the thick cloud, Meng Fangxi's pupils suddenly expanded. Outside the panoramic window, in the entire field of vision, the vanguard mecha group that served as the first line of defense, those mechas either had broken shields and were using their bodies to resist the artillery fire for the friendly aircraft behind, or they had run out of ammunition, lost their shields, and had no protection. Simply move forward at full speed, block the enemy's attack, use yourself as a bomb, crash into the insect swarm, detonate the energy furnace, turn into a dazzling fireball, and end your journey in the most splendid way. Arseholes. You bastards. Meng Fangxi roared, his eyes red, raised his sniper rifle, locked on a giant flea a kilometer away, and shot it in the head. The voice of Captain Marshall rang in the communication channel. Calm down. Our target is not these bugs. Don't waste the road that our predecessors have opened for us. Marshall's voice was trembling, and it was obvious that he was trying his best to control himself. Meng Fangxi's chest heaved, but he nodded and restrained his anger. Following closely behind the captain, in the sky full of flames, he rushed towards the giant fish in the distance. In the cockpit of Bayan, at this time, Luo Yan could no longer see the scene in the holographic window. As soon as the group of drones followed entered the thick clouds, they were destroyed by various energy shocks. Luo Yang could only look out of the panoramic window, looking at the war clouds flashing with fire in the distance. He gripped the floating point controller tightly and said in a deep voice in his heart, "Go for it. You must, go for it." Chapter 390 Ground Defense War. While the mecha group was landing, in the cab, Luo Yan saw a flashing signal spectrum appearing at the edge of the Behemoth radar. Then a message came from the Changping Corps Command. Attention, ground teams, a large number of flea swarms and behemoths have been detected, moving towards various defense locations, and entering the third warning zone in 3 minutes. Please all ground machines, be prepared to fight back. Here they come. Luo Yang concentrated and looked out the panoramic window. Even though the shadows of parasites and behemoths could not be seen with the naked eye, dust could be seen rising from the ground. The rolling yellow sand was very noisy. Not long after, it could be observed with the naked eye that a dense mass of tiny black shadows appeared in the air. Go. Prepare to fight back. Yan Wenbo's voice sounded in the Guanglin Corps dedicated communication channel. So one mecha after another ran on the ground, shaking the earth, and heading for the third warning zone. At the third warning zone, the Changping City Ground Combat Corps had completed its deployment, and a large number of tanks and armored vehicles had entered the designated positions. The tracks of the tanks spun and roared, moving forward at a rapid speed, and stopping at the coordinates given by the command room. When the mechas such as the Bayan entered the third warning zone, they could already see thousands of anchorhead giant fleas floating in the air and rushing towards them quickly, as well as giant beasts in the flea swarm or on the ground. Empty wall, deploy. With Yan Wenbo's order, invisible barriers rose up in front of the tank group. This was the defense blessing, provided by mecha masters like Kang Shun who were good at mystical arts. At this time, in the flea swarm in the distance, flickering lights had already lit up. Then, bioenergy rays cut through the air, fell from the sky, swept across the ground, and drew straight traces on the ground, and finally shot on the empty wall. The empty wall released by the mecha amplification withstood this wave of attacks, and only crisscrossed light marks appeared, but it did not collapse. But anyone with a little experience can see that, if it happens one or two more times, these empty walls will be shattered. So Kang Shun and other mecha divisions continued to release empty walls to protect the defense zone. The tank group behind the empty wall also began to fight back. The tank artillery, the tank missiles, and the dense artillery fire were like fireworks blooming on a summer night, exploding dazzling light in the air. One after another, orange-yellow flames cut through the air and fell into the flea swarms in the sky that were obvious targets. Immediately, the parasites in the air were constantly shot and fell to the ground. Even if they did not die immediately, they could only twitch painfully on the ground and could not continue to attack. When the missile exploded, huge fireballs with a diameter of more than 10 meters appeared in the sky. The surging flames quickly spread in the strong light of the explosion, rolling in countless giant fleas. Even if the giant fleas were not blown to pieces on the spot, they would catch fire and fall. Seeing this scene, the soldiers in the tanks cheered excitedly. But the good times didn't last long. With the charge of the male fleas in the flea group, the empty walls built by Kang Shun and others were smashed one after another. Although the male fleas also paid a tragic price for this, without the empty walls, the tank group was immediately exposed to the energy rays of the female fleas. Thousands of beams crossed the battlefield and passed through the tank group. The tanks that were scratched were cut open together with the ground. Then the fuel tanks lit up, and the whole tank exploded. Parts flew, and screams were heard everywhere. Then, groups of bright fireballs suddenly sprayed on the ground. The impact of the explosion set off a strong wind, whistling and rolling sand and stones, sweeping the earth like a storm. In the flames and smoke after the explosion, huge black shadows crashed out of the smoke. Behemoth. The flames and explosions just now were because these behemoths stepped on the anti-behemoth mines, which caused the legs of the behemoths to suffer varying degrees of trauma. The legs of the more serious ones were even blown off, and they could not move forward. Unfortunately, there were not many such giant beasts. More of them forced their way through the thunder array and charged with the flea swarms. "It's our turn." Yan Wenbo's voice sounded in the public channel. "According to the tactics set before, each team will attack." At that moment, Luo Yan, controlled by An to take the lead, set up a large shield and the machine gun on his shoulder, locked onto a raccoon with the help of a computer, shooting wildly. The tactics of their group were led by the Divine Guard leveled by An as the main attacker and assisted by Fidian controlled by Dugu Changxin. Kang Shun and Bei acted as defenders, providing support and assistance in the rear. In a blink of an eye, the charging raccoon was smashed to pieces by the machine gun of Bayan and died on the way to the charge. Bayan raised his shield again and blocked dozens of ray shot from the sky for the team members behind him. Luo Yan did not waste his energy to intercept the rays emitted by the female fleas, but simply used the heavy-duty shieldation to block them. At the same time, the supercore matrix on the Bayan flashed with brilliance, activating the energy absorption characteristics of the TOT, absorbing and storing most of the energy of the rays. It was not until a Goo Eagle swooped down from the sky and used the horn on its head to emit conical light waves that Luo Yan used his energy to make the surrounding space sound like a tide. He showed the phantom of heavy mountains and blue seas, weakening the horn spear attack of the giant beast, and then slapped the shield when the Goo Eagle swooped down, directly knocking the flying beast to the ground, and then slashed the long sword Fian down, cutting off the flying beast's head. At the same time, a male flea saw an opportunity and swooped over and hit the Bayan, but at this moment, a white lightning hit it sideways. It turned out to be a silver spear. The long spear lunged and stabbed into the male flea's head with a whoosh. Feridan swung his gun and smashed the male flea to the ground, smashing the parasite to pieces. Under Feridan's head, Several bioenergy rays suddenly streaked over, and when they passed through the mecha, an invisible barrier appeared above the mecha. It was the judge in the back who released the empty wall in time, and then quickly formed a seal under Kang Shun's control, and then a tornado rushed into the sky, sweeping up and strangling several female fleas in the sky. In front of Fenidian, a shadow suddenly rose up, and it was a giant wearing armor. However, this giant had no head, but there were heads hanging on the steel spikes on the armor. The giant wielded a cracked sword with both hands, and with a sweep, he smashed several male fleas. Behind the male fleas that were shattered and splashed with flesh and blood, Haley was pounced on by a giant beast that looked like an orangutan, but at this time a thick stream of Yuanli light came and brushed past the giant beast, erasing the flesh and blood on its back. The beast roared and bounced up, falling to the ground, revealing the figure of the demon machine Ganlang behind it, which was retracting the gun barrel in its mouth. Then, an orange-yellow mecha pointed at the beast in the distance, and the wolf beasts condensed by the elemental force around the mecha roared and entangled the beast. Taking this opportunity, Haley climbed up and rushed towards the beast. His fists flashed with lightning and suddenly hit the beast's head from left to right. The beast's head was deformed first and then exploded with a bang, and his liver and brain were splattered on the ground. Chapter 391 Organ Cluster. In the cockpit of a mecha, a man with dull eyes and a stubble on his chin was smoking. A holographic image window was opened on the command console, showing the scene of several mecha groups supporting the underground city, including Guangling City, engaging in ground offensive and defensive battles with the insect swarm and behemoths. At this time, an ethereal voice sounded in the communication channel on the command console. "Brother, do we have to just watch? If we took action, there wouldn't be so many deaths in the landing battle, right? Why do I feel that our dragon riders are so useless?" The man with dull eyes scratched his hair that hadn't been washed for several days, and white flakes fell down immediately. "Xiaoyu, it is precisely because we are dragon riders that we cannot take risks easily," the man said while smoking a cigarette. "There are only 36 of us, and 2/3 of us are deployed in desperate battlefields in those forbidden areas that may be evolving into desperate areas. These people are basically the elite of our dragon riders. Only those who are at the bottom like us will be given flexible and mobile tasks, such as protecting important figures like Dr. Jiuying on the ground, or like this time, responsible for giving the overall or the final blow. These two people are the dragon riders who protected Jiuying last time. Pan Crossing and Panyu are siblings," Panyu said in the communication channel at this time. "So why can't we take charge of the entire battle? It's so painful to see those people sacrificed." Pan Crossing exhaled a puff of smoke. "Although we are the last one, we are still dragon riders after all. We, the Xiangang dragon riders, have more important and higher level goals. Even if this underground city is gone, we can't sacrifice here. So what we can do is to let them consume the power of the giant beast, and when the giant beast has only one breath left, we will take action to harvest and complete the final blow. Xiaoyu, maybe one day, we will have to sacrifice like those people. But not now, and not in this place. What the Xiangang dragon riders want to protect is not a city, but this land." There was silence in the communication channel for a while, and then the girl said, "I know." In the vermilion mecha, the petite girl huddled into a ball, and her eyes were no longer as bright as usual. Asterisk 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 bang. In the cab, Meng Fang's whole body was shaken, but looking out from the panoramic window, he no longer saw the high altitude clouds and countless giant fleas, but the endless dark blue biological matrix that was rolling and undulating. "This is the forbidden area in the sky, on Kun's body?" Meng Fangxi stood up and looked back. The flea swarm in the distance was still active, rays were coming and going, fireballs were blooming, and the landing battle was still going on. "Go." Marshuo's voice sounded. "There are only 3 of us left in our team. We have to do the job of the brothers who died in the battle. Blow him up." Meng Fangxi nodded, controlled the mecha, followed the captain and Xiaorang's body, and began to move. On the command console, the command center began to give instructions and marked the locations of the anti-gravity organs on Kun's body. Soon, an organ was locked on the screen. Meng Fangxi immediately controlled the mecha and moved quickly with the other 2 friendly machines. In the sky, there were other bodies rushing through the fleece swarm and trying to land. Although the friendly forces in front had opened a landing channel, the process was still not easy and full of dangers. Just like now, a dark grey body can already see the ground of the forbidden area in the sky below. But at this time, a male flea appeared outside the panoramic window. Then the fuselage was hit hard and deviated from its original trajectory, followed by a series of rays. The mecha finally managed to hold on, but was attacked from behind by a Gudio. Suddenly, the Air Wing No. 3 aircraft malfunctioned and exploded. The mecha that lost the aircraft could not move forward. Similar things happened continuously, and in the end, only about 80 mechas successfully landed in the air forbidden area. Boom. An anti-gravity organ exploded, and fragments flew to the ground. In the cockpit, Marshall cheered and shouted, "Keep going, keep destroying." But at this time, the giant beast radar warned that a spectral signal was approaching at high speed from the sky. Marshall raised his head, and outside the panoramic window, the anchorhead giant fleas and various giant beasts that were originally scattered around the air forbidden area and located in the sky were now returning to the forbidden area. Damn it. Don't let people live. Jiuying, shoot those things down. Jiuying, cover me. After Marshall finished speaking, he controlled the mecha to run towards another anti-gravity organ. Meng Fanxi controlled the mecha, raised his sniper rifle, pointed it at the sky and fired repeatedly. Giant fleas were constantly hit and fell down. For a moment, bugs fell like rain near Meng Fanxi's mecha. On the other side, Marshall, under the cover of his teammates, continued to destroy the anti-gravity organs marked by the computer. These things were like huge flowers, with petal-shaped cavity walls opened, revealing diamond-shaped columnar crystals inside. Among these anti-gravity organs, some gathered together, and those diamond-shaped columns combined into the shape of towering trees. Their tops extended umbrella-shaped crystal veins, and the whole body exuded brilliant colorful light. This is an organ cluster. Each cluster is composed of hundreds or even more anti-gravity organs. They are important nodes that support the anti-gravity field, and are also the primary targets of destruction for the mecha group. Fortunately, Marshall's team soon found an organ cluster. Looking at the huge crystal tree that was more than a circle larger than the mecha, Marshall laughed and shouted in the communication channel, "I won the prize. Jiuying, cover me. Watch me blow this thing up." As he spoke, the armor on both sides of Marshall's mecha opened, and mechanical arms with parts of the gun stretched out from inside. With the help of the mechanical arms, Marshall quickly completed the assembly, and a strange gun appeared in the mecha's hand. If there is no grip trigger, this thing is like a rectangular black box. Marshall controlled the mecha to raise the gun, and pointed it at the anti-gravity organ cluster. Press the trigger. The energy node on the gun lit up, and the indicator lights on both sides of the barrel flashed continuously. Finally, a dark bullet with heavy meaning was fired from the muzzle. The bullet adjusted and rotated, dragging a gorgeous light mark, and threw it at the crystal tree in front. Bang! The bullet hit the crystal tree, and at the moment of contact, tens of thousands of fine cracks appeared on the surface of the crystal. Then pieces of irregular fragments peeled off from the surface, fell to the ground of the biological matrix, and shattered. The bullet went deeper and deeper, and after hitting the surface crystal, it came to the core of the crystal tree. This was no longer a crystalline material, but a part composed of many nerves, blood vessels, and flesh. This part was the key to the anti-gravity organ cluster. After the bullet passed through it, it exploded from the other side. Suddenly, the air was full of flying crystal fragments and broken flesh fragments. The entire crystal tree was shattered. The crystal veins from the roots to the crown were blown up by Marshall's shot. Chapter 392. Joining the battle. A cheer rang out in the Changping City Command Center. On the large screen, the signal of an organ cluster disappeared in the diagram of the anti-gravity organs of the Forbidden Sky. Although there are 126 clusters like this on Kun, more than 60 need to be destroyed to achieve the second phase of the combat goal. However, everything is difficult at the beginning. After the first one, there will be the second and third. Sure enough, not long after, the signals of organ clusters on the large screen disappeared one after another. The number of organ clusters destroyed in the Forbidden Sky is 3, 5, and 7. The reader counted nervously. But at this time, a monitor shouted, "The Forbidden Sky has detected an abnormal high temperature reaction. The temperature in Kun's body is rising sharply and has a tendency to be released outside the body." Another monitor shouted, "There is an airflow reaction in Kun's body. It is speculated that Kun may have to perform exhaust movement. There are 10 seconds, 9, and 8 before the airflow is released outside the body." On the bridge, the Chief of Staff Jiuying shouted, "Notify all aircraft. Kun is about to release high temperature and airflow. Please be prepared to resist." The voice rang in the communication channels of all mechs participating in the mission in the Forbidden Sky. Ma Shuo's face changed when he heard it, and he shouted, "Little Meng and Xiaorong, come here quickly. You are all like mechs, and you may be blown away, even if you put fixed stakes on them. Quick, let's connect the 3 mechs." The 3 mechs quickly gathered together. First each of them put fixed stakes on the ground, and then connected to each other. In this way, the 3 mechs are like a whole, and there are 2 insurance measures. Other mechs also put fixed stakes on them. If there are friendly mechs nearby, they will connect with multiple mechs to increase the safety factor of resisting impact. At the same time, various defensive mystical arts are released to prepare for the upcoming high temperature. After just 10 seconds, the entire aerial Forbidden Land could feel strong vibrations, and then the ground of the biological matrix suddenly opened up holes like craters. From these holes, high temperature airflow gushed out with a whoosh, and suddenly, all the mechs on the Forbidden Land were impacted. Hold on. In the cockpit, Ma Shuo's whole body was shaken violently, and he gritted his teeth tightly, controlling the mecha to hold the bodies of Meng Fangxi and the other man tightly. Meng Fangxi and Xiaorong's mechs were relatively light, and when they were hit, they were immediately blown up. Fortunately, there were fixed stakes in Ma Shuo, so they didn't fly away. But some mechs were not so lucky, especially those light mechs that had no friendly machines nearby to connect with. They were blown up into the air by the airflow all of a sudden. The fixed stakes could not last for more than a few seconds before they broke away from the ground, and the mechs flew up into the air uncontrollably. Next, in addition to enduring the impact of the airflow, the mechs also had to withstand the test of high temperatures. Soon, some primary and even intermediate mechs had red glows on their outer armor, showing signs of melting. The internal circuits, parts, etc. also emitted electric fire, short-circuited or caught fire. To make matters worse, when these mechs were rushed out of the forbidden area, the anchor-headed giant fleas, or feathered insects floating in the air would rush over. Soon, those mechs that were rushed out of the forbidden area by the airflow had no time to be recovered, and the aircraft behind them had no time to reset their orbits, and they were destroyed one by one. Changping Corps Headquarters. The remaining mechs are 79, 76, 73. This number did not stop until 69. Jiang Wuoyang's hand holding the railing turned pale, and even the surface of the railing had faintly sunken. The Chief of Staff looked at the big screen. How many anti-gravity organ clusters are left? Soon there was an answer. There are still 116. Jiang Wuoyang frowned. No, there are too many left. Each mecha has to destroy a cluster, but will the giant beast cooperate and watch us destroy the cluster? The answer is of course no. Jiang Wuoyang shouted, access the communication channels of all backup bodies for me. In addition, closely monitor the changes of Kun, especially the high temperature airflow impact just now. At the same time, on the ground battlefield, in the third alert zone, Luo Yan cooperated with Du Guchang's to kill a mid-level giant beast, and Jiang Wuoyang's voice sounded in the communication channel. Dear Reserve Mecha Divisions for the landing battle, this is the command center. At present, some of our mechs have successfully landed in the forbidden area and are launching the second phase of operations. But so far, we have lost more than half of the mechs, and the remaining mechs may find it difficult to complete the second phase of combat missions in a short period of time. But we don't have much time. Now, most of the parasite swarms and behemoths around the aerial forbidden area have returned to the forbidden area. Only a very small number are still wandering around the forbidden area. Compared with just now, it is much safer to land at this moment. Therefore, I'm here to ask you to join the second phase of the combat sequence. In this way, we can hope to complete this phase of combat missions before Kun arrives at the underground city. Of course, we won't let you pay in vain. Every mecha division participating in the operation can get a reward of 10 million work points. For each anti-gravity organ destroyed in the forbidden area, you can get a reward of 100,000 work points. Destroying an anti-gravity organ cluster is 10 million. Cash in the rewards immediately after the operation, or a sources of equivalent value. Due to the urgency of the situation, there is not much time for you to consider. 1 minute. If you agree, please reply within 1 minute. The communication ended. Luo Yan looked up at the sky. The sky in the distance was still covered with thick clouds and flashes of lightning from time to time. In the helmet, Luo Yan exhaled gently. Then he opened the communication channel of the Guangling Corps. Captain, I just received a request for help from the Changping Corps. I want to participate in the second phase of the battle. After a few seconds of silence in the channel, Yan Wenbo's voice sounded. Be careful. Luo Yan said and then handed the main attack position to Dugu Changxin, and immediately controlled Bayan to turn around and run towards the launch platform. At this time, a private conversation appeared in the communication channel. Bei's voice sounded. Student Luo, after you come back, can you accompany me to go shopping? I heard that the Wanli Lake in Changping City is very beautiful, and I have always wanted to see it. Luo Yan's eyes flashed, and then he responded readily, okay. Come on. I'll wait for you to come back. End the communication. In a blink of an eye, the Bayan arrived at the launch platform and entered the designated position according to the instructions. Since the mecha had already installed the joint device in advance, it didn't take long for the Air Wing 3 aircraft to be installed. What surprised Luo Yan was that there were quite a few backup aircraft participating in the second phase of the operation, more than 20. After all the aircraft were ready, Jiang Wuoyang's voice sounded again. Thank you all for being willing to stand up at this moment. Thank you. Now, start the countdown to ignition. 3, 2, 1 ignition. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 393, Successful Landing. Although he was mentally prepared, Luo Yan was still shaken when the aircraft ignited and took off. In the cockpit, several scales immediately appeared on his back. Suddenly, Luo Yan withstood the vibration of the flight. Even though he was still a little dizzy, he didn't feel as uncomfortable as before. After the mecha flew to an altitude of 2,000 meters, the body stabilized, and the scales on Luo Yan's back quietly disappeared. The distance of hundreds of kilometers from the forbidden area in the sky was gone in a flash under the effect of the aircraft. Not long after, Luo Yan looked out from the panoramic window and could see dense clouds and flashing electric lights. All mechs, we are about to enter the anti-membrane range. Please prepare for landing. Listening to the voice on the communication channel, Luo Yan activated his Yuanli and showed the virtual image of mountains and seas. He raised his heavy shield, grasped his long sword, and made full preparations. In a few seconds, Bayan crashed into the dense clouds and broke into Kun's super anti-membrane. In this zero-gravity area, not only was there fog and mist, but there were also various bullets, shells, and missiles floating around. Suddenly, a colorful wing fin appeared in the fog, undulating like waves, and poked out from the thick clouds. This wing fin was so large that the mecha was as small as dust in front of it. Luo Yan held his breath and watched the mecha pass over the wing fin, and then saw countless fragments floating nearby. These fragments were all from the parts, skeletons, devices, cables, and even external armor and weapons inside the mecha after the explosion. The sky was full of fragments, densely covering the space. One can imagine the cruelty of the previous landing battle. At this moment, a corpse passed by the panoramic window. Only the upper half of the corpse was left, floating in the zero-gravity area, and disappeared in the blink of an eye. Luo Yan said nothing, but held the controller more tightly. At this time, the computer kept reminding that the mecha began to descend in altitude, so that the pilots could prepare for earthquakes. Luo Yan opened all the shock absorbers of his armor. After a moment, the dark blue biological matrix in the panoramic window expanded rapidly. Boom. The Bion landed on the forbidden land in the sky. In the cockpit, Luo Yan's whole body shook violently and then stabilized. He landed successfully. As Jiang Wuoyang said, most of the previous parasite swarms and giant beasts had returned to the Forbidden Land, which made it possible for the reserve troops to land without any obstacles. Luo Yan immediately controlled the mecha to stand up and looked into the distance. He saw that the dark blue biological matrix of this Forbidden Land in the sky was undulating like hills. Anti-gravity organs like giant flowers were scattered on the surface, and the distance between each of them was limited, ranging from hundreds of meters to tens of meters. Due to the thick clouds in the sky, the field of vision was limited, but from time to time, a huge black shadow could be seen in the distance in the clouds. It was the dorsal fin of Kun. Target locked, distance 49 meters. At this time, the computer has begun to automatically lock the anti-gravity organs or organ clusters near the mecha. Hearing the instructions, Luo Yang concentrated his mind and controlled the mecha to run towards the locked target. No bullets were wasted. When approaching the target, the long sword Fian swept across the ground and smashed the anti-gravity organ shaped like a giant flower. As soon as the Bion moved, the other mechas followed suit. More than 20 mechas dispersed and destroyed the anti-gravity organs they found along the way according to the instructions given by the computer. Soon, Luo Yan had destroyed nearly 30 anti-gravity organs. At this time, the computer reminded again. Organ clusters found. Distance 105 meters. Organ clusters. Luo Yan's eyes lit up. This is an important node in the construction of the anti-gravity area. Destroying these organ clusters is of great significance. Otherwise, Changping City would not offer them 100 times the price of ordinary anti-gravity organs. Almost without the guidance of the computer, Luo Yan found an organ cluster with his naked eyes. The tree-like object stood on the ground not far away, surrounded by countless petal-shaped cavity walls that were clustered together and stuck together. Luo Yan ran towards the cluster, and the machine gun on the shoulder of the mecha roared, firing bullets at the crystalline tree. The metal torrent that was enough to shatter the body of the lower level giant beast was like a whip that whipped the crystalline tree, causing the crystalline tree to splatter. When the outer crystal layer was destroyed, the flesh and blood core inside was exposed. Luo Yan's eyes were red. With the help of the computer, he aimed the machine gun at the core. The fire whip formed by the bullet flow whipped the core, causing their flesh and blood to splatter. A moment later, the crystalline tree was broken in half by Luo Yan. At the same time, in the headquarters of the Changping Corps, the signal of an organ cluster on the big screen disappeared. Then there was another one. Seeing that the organ cluster on the screen was gradually disappearing, Jiang Wuoyang clenched his hands and said in a deep voice, "Please help you." In the forbidden area in the sky, after destroying an organ cluster, Luo Yan continued to move forward. However, perhaps because he destroyed an organ cluster, the anchor giant flea noticed this place. Soon, Luo Yan saw parasites floating over. He was not polite and did not save bullets. He set up the machine gun on the shoulder of the mecha and fired. The muzzle spewed out long flames. Huge shells kept jumping down and fell at the feet of the mecha, but they did not make any sound when they fell on the biological matrix. The machine gun of the Bion fired crazily, tearing the attacking insects into pieces. Broken insect corpses kept falling from the sky. From a distance, it looked like a rain of insects. Luo Yan destroyed the anchor giant flea while destroying the anti-gravity organs that could be seen along the way. After splitting another organ, his eyes suddenly shrank slightly and he felt a faint sense of fear. Soon, a red spectrum signal appeared in the corner of the Behemoth radar screen. Red signal. It is undoubtedly a high-level Behemoth. The computer quickly matched the signal, but in the end it showed no result. This is a giant beast that has not been discovered and registered. Luo Yan thought about it and used a feature of the hypernuclear matrix. The body of Bion quickly disappeared into the air. TOT, invisible. The main purpose of this battle is to destroy enough anti-gravity organ clusters, not giant beasts. So Luo Yan did not intend to entangle with the giant beast. After Bion disappeared, he immediately went in the opposite direction of the upper level giant beast. A moment later, a black shadow emerged from the clouds. This giant beast that was not in the archives was shaped like a rhinoceros beetle with a golden body and a hard shell. Although it was an insect-like giant beast, it had arms and legs that clearly belonged to human characteristics. It landed at the location where Bayan was just now. The row of insect compound eyes on its head looked around, but did not find an opponent. The rhinoceros beetle giant beast immediately raised its head and let out a sharp roar. Chapter 394 Kunpeng's turn. This rhinoceros beetle beast was attracted here because its anti-gravity organ cluster was destroyed just now. As a result, it came here and found no enemy, which made it very angry. The upper level beast already has a very high intelligence, so it naturally has various emotions. After roaring to vent, one of its compound eyes blinked. In just a moment, the hundreds of grids in its eyeballs reflected the figure of Mecha a few kilometers away. A yellow-brown heavy Mecha was carrying a large shield and a rifle, running wildly. When Luo Yan left, he issued a warning to notify other mechas that an upper-level beast was approaching. After receiving the warning, this Mecha immediately evacuated, but it was a heavy machine and its running speed was average. In the cab, the Mecha operator suddenly saw that the red spectrum signal on the Behemoths radar was approaching him at a very fast speed. He quickly pressed a button on the command console, and there were muffled bang 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 sounds behind the Mecha, and a series of green smoke rose, and dozens of guided missiles flew in all directions. After the guided missiles flew away, they suddenly exploded, emitting light black smoke. The smoke was mixed with Jiuying's powder. They scattered in all directions, emitting obscure fluctuations that attracted the giant beast. Heavy mechas are not mobile enough, so they usually prepare guided missiles to get rid of the pursuit of the giant beast. The rhinoceros beetle flying from behind, the insect compound eyes on its head blinked, looking in all directions, capturing the positions of all the guided missiles. It has already felt the fluctuations of Jiuying, but as a high-level giant beast, it is obviously not fooled. On the contrary, it burst out at full speed, and the figure of the giant beast suddenly blurred. I'm locked by a high-level giant beast. Request support. Request support. In the cab, the Mecha Master hurriedly asked for help. At this moment, light and shadow suddenly flickered outside the panoramic window. Then a rhinoceros beetle wearing a heavy golden shell appeared in the Mecha Master's field of vision. What kind of monster is this? Looking at the rhinoceros beetle with human arms and legs, the Mecha Master's scalp tingled, but his reaction was not slow. He raised a large shield and attacked with a gun. A huge gunshot rang out. Since it was a high-level behemoth, the Mecha Master did not waste energy using physical bullets, but used energy bullets. Bright yellow beams of light surged and exploded countless fireballs on the rhinoceros beetle. The rhinoceros beetle did not even open its anti-membrane. It just slightly lowered its center of gravity and aimed the long, hard, and sharp horn on its head at the Mecha. A sudden sprint. The Mecha Master in the cab only felt a violent vibration and then lost consciousness. He and the heavy Mecha he was driving, along with the thick shield with 100 layers of forged armor, were smashed to pieces. When the vague figure of the rhinoceros beetle rushed out 1,000 meters, it stopped, and the Mecha behind it suddenly exploded, and fragments flew everywhere. When the red spectrum signal could no longer be seen on the behemoth radar, Luo Yan lifted the stealth state of Bayan, and then heard a gloomy explosion in the distance. His eyes changed slightly. It sounded like the sound of Mecha energy furnace exploding. I wonder which unlucky Mecha was targeted and destroyed. Luo Yan had no intention of returning to fight. Although he had experience in killing high-level giant beasts, even at the same level, there were differences in strength. For example, the mirage turtle that he killed not long ago was obviously not as strong as the meatball like Tesu before. And the giant beast that he had never met before actually gave him a vague sense of danger. It might be more dangerous than Tesu. When he left, there was already a warning. Luo Yan thought he had done his part, so he didn't plan to go back to stop the giant beast. After all, destroying the anti-gravity organ is more important now. In a blink of an eye, several more anti-gravity organs were destroyed by Luo Yan, but he was not lucky enough and did not encounter organ clusters again. but on the holographic screen of the command console, Kun's anti-gravity organ signals had disappeared a lot, and the previously densely packed schematic diagram now had a blank area visible to the naked eye. The organ clusters that were highlighted showed the number of hits directly on the top of the screen. Luo Yan took a look and said, 21 is at least 40 away. Suddenly, Jiang Wuiyang's voice rang out in the communication channel. Attention all mechs in the forbidden area, Kun is moving abnormally. From the computer model demonstration, it is about to turn over. Fix your body immediately. Luo Yan quickly drove a fixed stake into the ground to fix the body. At this time, he felt the ground vibrate strongly. Then the earth in the distance gradually rose, and Luo Yan's body suddenly fell back. It turned out that the ground under his feet had begun to turn over, forming a slope at a certain angle. Bian immediately slid back, and Luo Yan immediately controlled the mecha to squat and inserted the long sword Fian into the biological matrix ground. The earth ball turned over, and the mountains collapsed, and the earth cracked. What about Kun? Luo Yan soon knew the answer. Bian soon couldn't stand firmly, even with the fixed stakes and the long sword. The mecha soon hung upside down. Luo Yan looked up and saw that the biological matrix ground was now above his head. Then, a whale-like cry sounded from a distance. Even though the mecha blocked the huge sound waves, it still reached the cab and vibrated Luo Yan's eardrums. The dragon scales on Luo Yan's body suddenly emerged and covered them piece by piece, and the loud noise in his ears was slightly reduced. At this time, the Bian was completely hanging upside down. Kun's body and the ground of the Forbidden Land were already hanging high above his head, completely blocking Luo Yan's sight. Kun Peng turned over, and the world turned upside down. Then, first the long sword slid out of the ground, and then the fixed piles could not support the weight of the body and broke. After all, they were not considered in the initial design. Suddenly, the Bian floated in the air. Before Luo Yan could react, he saw the ground above his head seemed to be slow, but in fact it was pressing down quickly. Seeing that he was about to be hit by Kun Peng's body, Luo Yan quickly circulated his Yuanli and showed the virtual image of the mountain and the sea. Holding up the big shield Taishan, he defended with all his might. Bang! Soon, the earth turned over again and hit the mecha and immediately knocked B out. The body was spinning uncontrollably in the zero gravity zone, making Luo Yan dizzy. At this moment, an alarm sounded on the command desk, and the zero gravity zone was changing. Gravity is recovering. Luo Yan heard the alarm and quickly concentrated and glanced at the command desk. He saw on a holographic screen that the scope of the zero gravity zone was shrinking. It was not known whether it was because the anti-gravity organ on Kun's body was destroyed, or whether this overlord beast had done something. In short, B left the zero gravity zone in an instant. Suddenly, the mecha fell down violently. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.